Hello again, everybody, and welcome to a frivolous episode of the Jim Cornette Experience. We're going to display frivolousness here today, baby, on the program. When today, I'm going to tell some stories and let some people know some things that they need to know about themselves. And to join me in doing that, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you, the greatest host, the greatest co-host. He's the man who's grating on you in every way, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. Another happy and exciting episode of The Experience.
You know what I love about you as a co-host, Brian? You're a one-take guy. You never fumfer. Some people I work with, the first words that come out of their mouth is a fumfer, and we got to do the whole thing. But you're right there.
No fumfer.
Ready to further the discussion, the conversation, to move things forward in an interesting and entertaining way.
I completely agree. Thank you so much.
Oh, all right. There was several haws that were hawed out this week. We have not spoken, you and I, very much, just on a couple of quick topics. But I haven't filled you in on, I've just given you teases. Like one time you called me a couple days ago. I said, well, the tow truck's got the car off the fence. And then a day or so ago, you called me real quick. I said, well, I can't hear you because of the sound of the excavator. So I believe I have told people in the past, that I live on what formerly was a very isolated, small, tiny, narrow country road that when it was first put in, it was basically a 2.5 or 3 mile stretch that you go through 3 or 4 farmers' properties. And then as people began moving in here in the 50s that bought the properties from the farmers, then there was a few people that lived here. But up until even just several years ago, we had some peace and fucking quiet out here on this road. But now with all the new developments that have come in everywhere, and the industrial park miles down the road, and the interstates getting hectic over on the other side, people have discovered my little tiny street. Not even a street, as I said, it's a road. After you go around the big old dairy farm, you come into a stretch where there's 2 90-degree turns, one to the right, one to the left, while going downhill. And then uphill, tree-lined streets. And for about a half a mile, you don't even come out of the canopy of the trees. They're right next to the street while it's going uphill and downhill. All these construction trucks and these people that drive like maniacs. As George Carlin said, anybody that's driving faster than you is a maniac. Anybody driving slower than you is an idiot. Well, they lean toward maniacs around here. So anyway, and we've had issues. Two houses over, the neighbor's son, several years ago, some idiot late for work. That'll play into this story. Fucking just broadsides him, pulling out of his own driveway, coming up over the blind hill like a maniac, right into his vintage Jaguar.
Ooh.
Yeah, almost killed him, put them all in the fucking. Another time, I was sitting here minding my own business in my office, and I look out the window and I see some idiot going about 60 or 70 miles. I had just processed in my mind that's the fastest I've ever seen anyone drive on this road when he got up over the hill out of sight, and I heard, and he had met coming because the road is not legitimately wide enough for 2 vehicles. They came and they widened it. The county did about 10 years ago, 18 inches to supposedly make it legal. But then they put a curb on, which makes it like a bobsled run. There's a curb on one side of some of the road now, which just further fucking throws things into chaos. So this guy going over the hill, his left tires had run up over the wheel well of a guy hauling a trailer, and he had just Joey Chitwooded himself up on 2 wheels and off into a tree in the woods on the other side. And there was his car crashed up into this tree, hood up, a trunk up, and the guy had got out and run off because he was some teenage idiot that lived way down across the forest, right? And he figured he's going to run home, left his car with his license plate and his left shoe in the fucking car. And by the time he could get through those goddamn woods, the cops were already at his house waiting for him when he fucking turned up. They've taken 2 of my mailboxes. They killed that deer. We told the story on the program here a few years ago right in front. So the point is, we're fed up with these people driving like this around here, right? So, Tuesday morning, a day like any other day, I left the post office for the castle in Decay. And, well, you're not a Styx fan? Anyway, so I get home, and here's the Monroe brothers. Alf and Ralph have showed up, and they're working down at the creek in the back. They're putting me a stone little patio sitting area down. So anyway, I get them started. They got 2 trucks because they're hauling all this stone. And I get them started, and I come back, and I sit down in the TV room, and I start packing action figure boxes. Because what else would I be doing on a waking moment in my home? Packing action figure boxes. And by the way, I'll get the plug in now. Folks, another couple of 100 figures have gone out since we have spoken, and all the 2-packs, by the time you hear this, the domestic 2-packs will have been filled. And now we're starting on the single individual figure orders. And those are going to take probably the next 10 to 14 days. And then we're going for the, 10 days. 10 days tops. Because then we're going for the figures and other items and the internationals. And I could be done with this thing in the next 4 weeks. Anyway, so I sit down and start doing the action figures. All of a sudden, I hear this tremendous crash of rending metal and the first thought, my God, the Monroe brothers, Alf in his truck and Ralph in his truck in my driveway have run into each other right outside in my driveway. And I come out there and I said, what? And they're back at the creek with their trucks. I look down to the road and there's this woman has stopped her car going east up the hill right in front of my, or not even up the hill yet, but right in front of my driveway, getting ready to go up the hill, has stopped and is getting out of her car. And there's somebody coming over the hill going west. I see stopping now and I'm like, what the fuck? I can't see around these 2 big green bushes on the fence row in between me and the neighbor, but they're looking at something. And then I have to walk halfway down the driveway. And then I realize, Brian, if I'm lying, I'm flying and my feet have not left the ground, but this car did. There is a white Ford Mustang sideways up over the goddamn on top of my fence in between me and a next door neighbor, right on the road, right next to my power pole. And its tires are still spinning. And what the fuck is this now? I can't even be in my home. They won't leave me alone. So I not climb because my front fence sits back off the road. If you saw the whole layout, you would understand. But nevertheless, I got to go run around through my gate, my driveway gate, and then come back up to where in my front yard in between me and the neighbor, there's this car turned sideways. Both left tires are over the top of this 4 or 5 foot wire farm fence between me and the neighbor. And they're still spinning. And this teenage kid, was an 18-year-old kid, was driving this white Ford Mustang. He is pulling the other people in this car out of the car and dragging them up to where they can sit under the tree. And it's not like he's pulling out dead bodies. He's pulling them out of the car because it's fucking halfway upside down and it requires climbing. They're all ambulatory, right? They're bumfuzzled and confused about the whole situation, obviously. But they're moving around. And I said, is everybody okay? And some woman standing there goes, yes, he's got them all out there sitting under the tree wondering where the fuck they went wrong. And just then the other woman that's come from the other side said, well, because the hood is up. The hood's up along with the tires and the hood's up in the air and this thing sideways over the fence. And what happened? The reason why I didn't take the whole fence over is because it is sitting on a heavy-duty metal guide wire to the power pole that provides my electricity that is up 50 feet in the fucking air, and this thing's on the guide wire, and it's bending. The wire is bending slightly, but that's the thing that stopped the car. It would have gone. It had to flip a couple of times. So anyway, So the woman says, the engine is smoking. Is it still running? I said, hey, is you turn this car off? Because you're sitting on top of a goddamn power pole and the engine's smoking. And the fucking guy's running back in it to turn the car off. Right? I'm like, oh, geez, how? So then, while I'm surveying whether is my power pole cracked, is it going to come down on all of us? That's a live electrical wire. Is this fucking car catching on fire? I'm standing away from it. And my fence is fucked on the front of it. The big metal pole on the end and another one of those tubular metal poles is all knocked out of the ground and bent over. And they've destroyed one of those green bushes. Motherfucker, spending all this money to plant this shit. Somebody comes along and wipes this shit out. Well, and this is right where my fucking lawnmower was here too, along with the Monroes, and he had been mowing that part 15 minutes before this guy fucking dropped in. So anyway, apparently, before I go any further with the story, apparently what happened, this is a one-car accident. This guy's coming through the narrowest, tree-linedest, most, really tiny part of this road and comes up over the hill from the other side. And from what I've seen now, had to be doing 60 to 70 miles an hour, which is unheard of. If you saw this, you'd go, what the fuck? Because apparently when he got at the top of the hill and he saw the woman that I saw stopped coming the other way, he moves over to the right and overcorrects. And once you run off the right side of the road, you're in the fucking woods, right? And he fucking, boom, jumps back across the road all the way to the left into my neighbor's front yard, mows over his goddamn fire hydrant. Now we know that it's all bullshit in the movies when you knock the fire hydrant over and the water shoots up. No, it doesn't do anything. Either that or they gave him a gimmick fire hydrant. More on that later. Then, as I said, apparently to land in this way, the car had to roll at least once. And it missed a maple tree so big a grown man can't reach around it by about 3 feet. And when it came to rest, the end of the car was 2 feet from another fucking tree so if he'd have been 2 feet over, it just wrapped the whole thing around the tree and killed everybody. But he managed to land in the fucking safety netting of my goddamn fence, right? So anyway, I've surveyed this. They've turned the car off. The engine's still steaming. The power pole doesn't look like it's going to fall down. I'm surveying this from about 30 feet away in my front yard. And this woman, surveying the scene. How? And the woman comes up to me, the first one to stop, and said, do you have a pen and paper? I said, no, I was just in my goddamn house. I said, no, I don't have a pen and paper. She says, well, I need to give you my name and number because I'm late for work. What? I'll give you my information. I said, lady, I ain't involved in this, except that that's my fence. And I said, you're late for work. I'm worried who's going to pay for my fence. And I turn around and start to walk back up the driveway, right? Because the cops are coming. There's at least, I would say, 8 people out in the neighbor's yard stopped coming that way. And there's 3 or 4 more cars stopped coming this way, where people have got out and gathered around, and I'm not in the mood for a goddamn social gathering that I didn't call for in my front yard, so I'm going to go back to the house, right? So I start walking up the driveway, and guess what she did, Brian? The woman who said, well, I need to give you my information. You could have it because I'm late for work. And when I said, well, I'm worried about my fence and turned around to leave, she said, oh, you don't care if the people are injured? It hit me wrong. I turned around and I wanted to make sure that everybody heard this. So it was much louder than what I am recreating for you here now on the program. But I said, no, I fucking don't. I don't give a fuck about you fucking douchebag. I don't give a fuck about all you motherfuckers up there. I did not ask one single solitary son of a bitch to come over here this morning and drop a fucking car on my fucking fence. I'm sick of you fucking morons that don't know how to fucking drive. It's goddamn obvious you're a fucking imbecile, and I hope you flatline on the way to the fucking hospital. Oh. Who's gonna pay for my fucking fence? Fuck all of you. Get fucked. And I came back up, and then I'm so fucking mad. And now the Monroe brothers, it's like, because now they've sent, by the time I get up to the fucking house again, they've sent an ambulance. Apparently, the kid driving had mud on his face and his arm was cut. And later on, we said a lot of people were saying, well, he's lucky he's alive. They take him to the hospital. He's lucky he was alive. I should have been the first one down there. But anyway, now the ambulance and the goddamn fire truck is coming. And here they close the street for hours. There's pieces of his car laying out in the road. And the Monroe brothers go down there and they're going to watch so I don't have to fucking deal with these people and find out when there's somebody that's going to tell me who's going to fucking, do I need to have part of this police report to give my insurance for this fucking fence deal, right? So it's all this goddamn falderall and for hours, and everybody finally they've got the emergency vehicles out of here. They're letting cars by. And they'd been turning them around forever. And, of course, we didn't get one of our deliveries because they had to turn everybody around. So then one of the Monroe brothers comes up and says, well, that cop there, he's taking a report. So I go over there, or down there. And I said, officer, what do I need a copy of the police report or whatever? I've never been in a situation like this where somebody just dropped. They said, well, how are you involved? I said, that's my fence because the car's still there. They didn't come and bring the tow truck and get all that shit till later. But anyway, I said, that's my fence. I said, so I do. I said, is this an insurance thing? What goes on here? He said, oh, were you the one yelling? I said, okay. I said, yeah, I was.
That's exactly what I was thinking before. I'm thinking all these people, you said there's 8 people in your neighbor's yard. They're all around this accident. All of a sudden, hey, there's some guy screaming.
Yeah, I was. And he said, well, you weren't concerned that anyone was hurt or killed? I said, no, because I already knew. That's the first thing I asked. Once that I ascertained that nobody was hurt or killed, and that there was nobody else involved in that accident except that stupid idiot driving 70 miles an hour down this road that you patrol every day, I'm sure. Then my sympathy went to my fence, especially when that woman pissed me off because she was going to be late to work. I didn't ask any of these people to drop in. I said, you know all the accident reports. I said, you know the way people drive around here. He said, well, he's lucky to be alive. I said, yeah, I figured that. So he takes my shit. He says, all right, here's the thing you can get the copy of the accident. And then I realized, well, what the fuck? I got a $500 deductible. And so really, it cost me $500 for these people to drop in on me being stupid and acting like an idiot. So no, I got no fucking sympathy. So anyway, then his story to the cops was that someone pulled out of a driveway and threw him off, and then he lost control. Problem with that was, if you saw the layout, the 2 driveways that could possibly have been involved in something like that, nobody was home at either house. And so elsewise, somebody pulled out of a driveway and he went out of control and went up 100 feet up a fucking hill, over the top of a hill, and then down while still out of control because of that driveway. Anyway, the neighbor comes home and sees all this shit and then calls me to find out what. So this is the better part of goddamn, Tuesday during the day to like 3 o'clock for all of this gaga. Then we had record weather Tuesday night here in Louisville. Brian, did you hear about this? Read about this? This has never happened before.
I did not. I've been on mute most of the time because I'm dying over here listening to this story.
Well, let me know if you need some goddamn oxygen because there's more shit coming up. So anyway, as I mentioned Tuesday, the Monroe brothers were out in the yard working Tuesday. It was 70 degrees at fucking 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Overnight Tuesday, a cold front comes through, and Louisville, Kentucky got 2 inches of snow. It's the latest in a year we've ever had measurable snowfall. It also was a record amount, and for the first time ever, my dogwood tree out in the front, I just tweeted a picture. So a lot of people have seen this. Actually, Stacy took the picture and tweeted it, but it was my direction of doing that. For the first time ever, it's the same age as me. I've never seen it in full bloom with snow on the leaves. It was freaky. And then by the next morning, we wake up 2 inches of snow, and by noon, it's 47 degrees, and it's all melted off. And then guess what happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? You're not guessing.
I have no idea what happens at 2 o'clock.
It snows again. It snowed for 5 minutes. Flakes as big as Kellogg's cornflakes at 47 fucking degrees on Wednesday here. And then Thursday, guess what happened on Thursday, Brian?
The weather got warmer.
No, we're back to the fucking accident. The weather's done.
Back to the accident. Did they finally get the truck off or the car off the fence?
Well, no, the car left by Tuesday afternoon, but now we forgot about that poor little defenseless fire hydrant. Because this fucking moron has just plowed it off the fire hydrant. The one that I guess it's because we didn't used to have city water out here till about 25 years ago, and then we never had fire hydrants. They used to have to bring a tanker truck if anything went on, but the fire hydrants went in 10, 15 years ago, whatever. I've never seen one in action, but I guess it's the only one for like 5 or 6 properties, or, immediately adjacent. So this is a thing they need to address. So guess how many city employees it takes to fix a fire hydrant?
Probably about 8.
Well, they had an excavator. You know that thing with the big shovel bucket on the front that digs the big trenches?
Yeah.
They had the thing that the excavator rode in on. They had 2 dump trucks. They brought a truck of dump. They brought a dump truck of dirt and then had an empty dump truck to put the dirt in that they dug up. I'm not sure what the fuck was going on there. They had 2 pickup trucks. They had 2 police cars, one at one end, one over the hill and one on this side, to block one lane and fucking deviate all the traffic. And there was, 2, 4, 6, 7 vehicles there. So about 10 people. If you don't count the cops, your estimate was correct. They dug a 15-foot-long ditch with a mound of dirt that was about 4 feet high and about 15 feet long, did whatever you do to fix a fire hydrant and covered the whole thing back up. And that took the better part of the day on Thursday down there. So I had it looked like a goddamn Macy's parade just right in front of my house because they stopped them instantly right in front of my property. People wonder why I'm antisocial.
Were you wearing the Cornette face shirt when you
No, I wasn't.
When you were screaming at this
I was
woman?
making it, but I wasn't wearing it. What the fuck? You can't. I swear to God. Ronnie Garvin used to tell me, he said, you're scared, in the accent, you're scared to fly, but you're going to be like the guy on the news. He didn't like to fly, so he was asleep in bed in his house, and a plane crashed on his house. They just drop in. Anyway,
you don't see that every day. Usually when there's a car accident, people get together. They try to come up with a solution. I mean, some people just keep driving by, but if it's a small little area, people will pull over and try to help. You don't usually see some guy start screaming, "Good, I'm glad they're hurt. I hope they flatline."
I want to see his fucking head sticking out of the gas tank. Well, do they ever interview the owner of the fucking property where the guy's car is stuck through the living room window? I bet he'd have a different fucking outlook on the goddamn thing. If the guy had been driving responsibly and swerved to miss a deer, I would have not only helped him out of his car and given him CPR, I would have chipped in to buy him a new car. That's a A1 quality human being. 70 miles an hour with 3 of your friends or relatives or whoever the fuck of approximately the same age in a fucking car doing 70 miles an hour through the woods on a fucking street 12 feet wide. Fuck you. You deserve to run into the goddamn tree. Anyway, I'm just telling you. Hey,
and then the cop says to you, were you the guy yelling?
Yeah. Apparently they got my message.
Oh my
and here's
God.
another. Somebody said, well, a dumb teenager in a sports car. I was 16 when I got my driver's license, and my first car was a Pontiac Firebird. It was a rather snazzy thing. It was used, but still, that didn't mean I figured I was Mario Andretti or Joey Chitwood and his thrill show and just decided to go out and do stunts. I was responsible.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, there was one of the emails we got. We got several emails from various listeners. And this one I got such a tickle out of, and I like this guy. So I'm going to read it, even if I don't know whether he meant for it to be read or not, and I accidentally saw it. I've told you I'm trying to stock up on emails of people talking about things that we talk about because they're fixing to, the email gods are fixing to change the layout of my email. I don't know if I'll even understand it or ever use it again after June. But anyway, but you remember we were talking about the list of top 10 comedy wrestlers that somebody put out, and were they really comedy wrestlers or weren't, and some was misplaced and some was not. Well, this is one of the guys we talked about. I got an email from Grado.
No, really?
Yeah, but no, yes. No, yes, really. Yes, really. Not no, but yes, really. No, really. But anyway, I said, we had done when I first went to the UK, we'd done the promotion. I think Kenny McIntosh set it up because it was in Glasgow, and that was his part of the tour. And we had the burger eating contest, and Grado was part of that. And Joe Hendry, that genetic marvel, beat all of us. But anyway, and he's a nice guy. And I said, I didn't remember whether he was in TNA that week that I spent down there, that week I spent one night in 2017, but he was there. But to be honest, at most of those tapings, I did my on-camera talent stuff, and Jeff had me produce, I think it was Johnny Morrison and Eli Drake and some of the stuff they did that night. And otherwise, I did not watch most of the rest of the show. But so I didn't mean to not remember him. But anyway, Grado writes, as a religious listener to the drive-thru and the experience on my way to my radio station each morning, I shit my pants when my name popped up on the comedy list. His quote is, "This could go tits up. My heart was in my effing mouth. Thankfully, I came out pretty unscathed, and I thank you. As well as being together in the UK, I worked with you for a few tapings at Impact in Florida. I remember cutting what I thought was a serious in-ring promo with Abyss. I came back for advice and approached you saying, Jim, I've never cut a serious promo before. And you interrupted, and you still haven't cut a fucking serious promo. Anyway, but no, this has a good ending. I think everybody gets what they want. Anyway, thanks to my run over the last few years, I've landed spots in 2 BBC sitcoms, hosted a game show, and do an 8-week pantomime run each year at Christmas, and am now currently hosting breakfast radio on national radio. Still love wrestling, but in the UK, we are still nowhere near to opening back up to crowds. It's been a full year now. And let me say this, I'm glad. I still don't remember seeing any of Grado's matches, and as Grado and I both know, is probably best off for that, because I just met him on a social basis and liked the guy. And he's fun, and he's funny, and he's somebody that wanted to be an entertainer. So now he's doing radio, he's hosted a game show, he's done sitcoms. I think we're all better for that. He's being an entertainer, and we're not watching him wrestle. I love you, Grado, but listen to this. There's one more trivia note, and I'm not sure the way he worded this. I think it may be the other way around, but remember, I've talked about that one show down there, WrestleMania weekend of 2017. I went down with What Culture and did announcing on one of their house shows. And that's where Joey Ryan was booked, and James Dixon was the booker, and came to me and said, well, we've lost a name, and so we have to replace him, and we've got Ryan. And I said, well, I'll bow out of that match. I'm not calling the Dick spot. I'll get a phone call from the back or whatever. He said, no, I don't like the Dick spot anyway. I'm telling him not to do it. Well, apparently, the end of Grado's email is, I thank God every day I had to pull out of a show at Mania Weekend where you were lined up to commentate on a match between me and a certain wrestler with a certain spot you don't speak too highly of. So apparently the way that this was, I thought that Ryan was the substitute, but they had whatever the fuck, Grado would have been there. So I would have seen him wrestle, and probably he might have been the onslaught of my Fury. But anyway, it's very coincidental how these things work out.
Very
but
cool.
It was nice hearing from him.
Very nice.
And I still beat him in the burger eating competition. And then Hendry smoked both of us. Anyway, you can't please most people ever, right? But you definitely can't please all the people all the time, or damned if I do, damned if I don't. Give me some more of those old sayings that are basically saying the same thing.
If not now, when?
I don't know if that's the same thing.
I don't have any more expressions for you right now.
We'd like to send out our sympathies to a couple of regular listeners of the programs, Josh and Aaron, because they sent me an email also, and I'm sad to say that their 18-year-old rescue dog, Queenie, has passed away. And they sent some pictures with the email, and she was so cute. Anyway, you know me. I'm a sucker for dogs especially, but all animals. And basically Josh wrote and said that Aaron was taking it hard, and if Queenie got some recognition on the program, that Aaron might feel better. So our sympathies to Josh and Aaron on Queenie. And for those of you who have been anxiously awaiting seeing me on television again, May the 6th, Vice TV, the debut episode of season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring is going to be 2 hours on Brian Pillman. And I will be involved in that episode, and there will be 7 episodes of Dark Side in the first set of episodes on season 3. As I mentioned, Pillman's the debut. I'm going to be in a couple of them, and we're going to have Evan and Jason, the producer and directors and stars and minds behind the whole program, here next week on The Experience, the week before the debut, to talk about it. They may, among other stories, tell how they convinced me to let them into the bubble during the pandemic by telling me they'd been in a motorhome for two weeks without other human contact. And they pulled up in the motorhome and almost couldn't get the motorhome out of the castle. Or not actually the house, but the castle grounds. You know what I'm saying. So anyway, Dark Side of the Ring, May 6th, Vice TV, 2 hours, Brian Pillman. That's the debut. I'm going to be on some of these. They're going to be gorgeous, except I got to mention, and I wouldn't even have brought this up, except I just saw this on Twitter this morning. One episode that I will not be promoting. They're going outside pro wrestling this season on Dark Side of the Ring. Did you know that? They're doing a non-pro wrestling episode. It's a show on garbage wrestling, that fucking idiot Nick Gage. And this is just a sore spot with me, because this is just another example of just how stupid people in the wrestling business are these days. This is the guy that was a drug addict that robbed a bank in New Jersey, on camera, was caught and sent to prison. And people, after he got out, people still book this fucking guy. And now here's another thing, hearkening back to what we said a minute ago. George Floyd got murdered in the street for a phony $20 bill. This guy robs a fucking bank while he's on drugs, serves a couple of years, and when he gets out, these garbage wrestling promotions still book him. But yet today, I see a story of one of our major wrestling stars, Brian, who loves that garbage type of stuff. I'm sure you can't possibly guess who it might be. The CEO of Moxley Plumbing, the head balding plumber himself, John Moxley, tells a story to one of these websites. Somebody tweeted it to me, said, look at these clowns. He worked with this guy apparently a few years ago, not recently, and in the middle of them having their fucking garbage match that he's so enamored of, the bank robbing drug addict, or would it be a drug addicted bank robber? What's proper grammar there? Would he be described as a drug addicted bank robber? I guess instead of a bank robbing drug addict, you would drug addicted bank robber. But regardless,
I don't know.
The guy took a pizza cutter to Moxley's tongue, and Moxley did not say. He just said, oh, I hope this guy hasn't cut my tongue out. He didn't say whether he did or not. I assume he didn't because he's still talking. But the point is, besides the fact that if Moxley's such a tough guy, he didn't get up and beat the piss out of this guy. I think that's exposed that. But secondly, if you call yourself a professional wrestler, working with someone who, with or without your knowledge, would take a pizza cutter to your tongue, indicates that you may think you're a wrestler, but you're definitely not professional. The drug-addicted bank robber or bank robbing drug addict, I can't remember. He's the one that cut fucking David Arquette's throat. Then this was after he got out of prison because he was still being booked. What is CM Punk had some quotes about whether he or not he wanted to be involved in the wrestling business we're going to talk about here in a little while. And this is one of those ones that makes me wonder why anybody wants to be involved in what they call wrestling these days. I mean, you didn't have to have a conversation like this 30 years ago. This fucking drug robbing bank addict or whatever the fuck he is when he'd been in the fucking business. He'd been drunk in a fucking seat that he paid $7 for somewhere. But is this the kind of people that and here Jon Moxley works for allegedly major promotion on a national TV program and is telling stories about, I was a dumb shit and worked with a drug robbing bank addict that fucking cut my tongue out with a pizza cutter. What the? Damn it. Your thoughts on the bank drugging? The
drug robbing bank addict? Yes.
Drug robbing, or no, I think he's actually a rob addicted drunk banker. A robbing addicted drunk banker. Or something.
I feel like I'm on Dick Cavett right now. I don't know if there's really too much more to add. It's not a surprise that Jon Moxley's been a part of or enjoys or celebrates garbage wrestling or whatever you want to call it, that CZW brand of, I don't even know, is CZW even in existence anymore? I don't even know.
One would hope not, but these things are like fungus on a shower curtain. They never truly go away.
But yeah, I'm not a big fan of this stuff. I mean, it would be one thing if the guy's gimmick was, I make pizza. I just happen to have this pizza cutter here to get your tongue.
Don't tell Vince.
But if there's no pizza making gimmick, why would he have a pizza cutter?
Because it's stupid.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's stupid.
That's what they do.
Really
they do stupid shit, and they step on Legos with their bare feet, and they play with thumbtacks because they're so hardcore. I'd like to put one of those hardcore motherfuckers in the ring with Don Fargo just once and tell, hey, Don, this guy says he can take it. Okay.
I told you when I was a kid and I first found out about the NWA in '89, I was told things by the other kids that were lies. And one of them was that there's a tag team named the Dynamic Dudes, and they come out on skateboards covered in blood. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Covered in blood. This is what I was told by the other kids. Now, obviously, there was a bit of a disappointment when I started seeing the Dynamic Dudes, but it sounded so amazing I had to see it. I said, where?
Maybe that's why the people were cheering the Midnight Express, because they wanted to see us cover them in blood.
But in this case, this is a story I can imagine if I was 9 years old and I heard, and then there's this other wrestler, and he takes out a pizza cutter, and he cuts the tongues out of the wrestlers. I'd say, oh man, what channel can I see this on? Yeah. No, it's over at that rec center. There's going to be like 40 26-year-olds there in T-shirts. You can't miss it.
Well, in other news, apparently we have been hornswoggled, Brian.
We have?
We have been misrepresented, too, and we have fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. We're suckers, apparently. The feedback is out on the internet where we made mention of the bizarre videos that Lacey Von Erich put out over her WrestleMania weekend trip, where apparently she just showed up at, this is not something we fell for. This is something she actually did. She showed up at the WrestleCon convention and shot her own videos of her interacting with people to put on her own channel somewhere or whatever. But we said at best, she does not need to do this anymore. And at worst, is it a cry for help from someone who's got some issues, right? This was not just our assumption. This was the assumption of a lot of people watching these videos. You saw them before I did, and you were like, oh my God. Apparently now a lot of people are saying, you don't understand, Cornette Last, you guys are idiots. You don't know anything about wrestling. It's a work. She's really a nice girl, and she's so smart. And she's just doing that to troll people. It's a work. That's her gimmick.
What's her gimmick?
That's what I wanted. I said, oh, well, apparently she is the best worker at her particular gimmick that has ever existed in the wrestling business. If her gimmick is making people think that she is a drunken, airheaded, blonde bimbo saying incredibly unfunny, unentertaining, and cringeworthy things to sometimes complete strangers about the amount of her relatives that have died.
Are people claiming that like Ricky Steamboat and Kevin Nash and Jake were all in on it? Or?
It was all part of the way. Yeah, because apparently she and Nash are real good friends. Now, I've seen Nash around some of his good friends, and he wasn't looking at her like she was one of his good friends, but maybe they have known each other, and maybe she just, assumed that they're good friends, and he's like, what the fuck is she doing? But I know Ricky Steamboat, he was pretty puzzled at her presence. However, that's the thing. It's all a work, Brian. Apparently, the can of beer in her hand in every single video must be water and
apple juice. Has to look a certain color. Yeah.
Well, in a can.
If there's any moments where you see it pouring out of the can into a mouth, it has to resemble the right color.
Oh, there were plenty of moments when people saw it pouring out of the can into her mouth. All right, but so it's a work. She's really I guess she's an MIT graduate. And, she's studying right now biometric science, and she just does this on the weekends for a hoot, trolling people to make them believe that she is an unfunny, airheaded, alcoholic bimbo wandering around saying vastly inappropriate shit. Because that is the gimmick that she exhibited in that video. If that is a gimmick, would that not be the gimmick? What other gimmick would that be?
Drinking is one thing. I didn't see any signs of alcoholism. Can't really comment on bimbo. I don't know what is going on.
She was
You're saying the character's a bimbo?
Steve, the character, yes, because if it's a gimmick, because that's the way that everybody assumed that she was coming off. She had a beer can in her hand more often than Steve Austin did back in the Attitude Era. In every video, she's drinking beer and she's saying wildly inappropriate things about her dead family members, mixed in with unfunny jokes that nobody gets, and that they're standing there staring at her like, what planet did you land on? And then she rolls her eyes and gives her catchphrase and walks off. So if there's a market for that, then apparently she's going to have it cornered. But yeah, a bunch of people were busting our balls, Brian, because we couldn't recognize she's trolling people. It's all a work.
All right.
Speaking of working and people who are asked not to anymore, Ryback. We mentioned, I have a poll update, because we mentioned this on a recent program, that Ryback had put a poll out on his Twitter. What promotion, or what would you like, I don't remember how it was phrased, but what would you like me to see me do with my career? Go to AEW, go to NXT, or retire? And we remarked at the time that retirement was basically the choice of at least half of the respondents to the poll. I got an update a couple of days ago. I don't know if it's still up, but as of 2 days ago, retirement had reached 71%. Right?
Oh, come on.
On his own Twitter.
That's awful.
71%. But there may be something to this, because now you're the technical genius here in this relationship, so you got to educate me on what's going on here, because the old fatback is claiming that that Twitter is out to get him. He's even sent a strongly worded tweet to Twitter support because apparently there's something. Is this another conspiracy theory? I don't even know what it's called, but supposedly Fatback says it's just not right. I've got all these subscribers, like over 1 million subscribers, probably from when he was on the television for the WWE. But like his tweets only get a 15 retweets or whatever, and nobody sees his tweets. They're hiding him. They're out to get him at Twitter. Is this actually a thing, or is this a thing that people who just aren't very fucking interesting say is a thing?
I think that's what it is. And I think when you're a celebrity on TV, sometimes you'll gain followers who are looking to just support someone they see on TV, not necessarily looking for your poetry or your wisdom or your thoughts. They see someone on TV, they follow him. He hasn't been on TV in a while. I don't know what he's saying. Is he saying that
they forgot to cancel their automatic subscription?
Is he saying that it's a fake vote? Is he saying
it's not particularly about the vote. He's upset about his whole Twitter because nobody's paying attention to him on Twitter, and he's saying they're hiding his tweets. They're not letting him get out. The Twitter is out to get him somehow. He's written Twitter support about this.
See, this should be his gimmick.
Nobody gives a fuck.
This should be his gimmick when he comes back. The guy who you see in the gym and you would never think is obsessed with social media.
Cryback. Cryback. But yeah, and that's I've heard this also, that some of these people, I didn't know you could do this, and I don't know how to do it. I can't even figure out yet how to count or find a number on the number of people I blocked on Twitter. But people buy Twitter followers to beef up their subscription list or whatever, their followers, but then they obviously are either fake or not interested, so they wouldn't be retweeting your shit, right?
Right, but are you accusing Ryback of being someone who purchased fake followers?
No, somebody on Twitter that knows more about it apparently than I do said, well, he must be one of these fucking assholes that buys followers. I don't know whether he does and I really don't care. I block as many as I get. Can you imagine how many I'd have if I didn't piss off half the population and block everybody who admits to being a Republican alone?
Maybe a good coffee table book, Blocked by Jim Cornette. And just all the little profiles. Yeah.
And then the book, the cover could have legs that fold down from the bottom of it, and you could make it a coffee table. So it's a coffee table book that becomes a coffee table.
Typical Booker, stealing someone else's ideas.
Hey! Anyway, all right, well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if Ryback or Cryback is going to adhere to the final results of the poll, but I can tell you how you can raise your credit score even more than they raised his retirement, and that's with Scoremaster, Brian. I'll work on that transition and use it again in a few weeks when everybody's forgotten that I fucked it up. Anyway, did you know that the average American has 97 points they can add to their credit score and have no earthly idea, not a clue on how to get them? Scoremaster is the new credit science that super boosts your credit score. Forget raising your credit score a couple of points. Well, that's so weak it couldn't draw a greasy string out of a cat's ass. The average Scoremaster user raises their credit score 61 points in 20 days or less. 61 points. And that's amazing. But let's say your credit score, Brian, I know you've got perfect credit, but let's say it was in the high 500s, mid 600s. When you bought a new car, if you'd gone to Scoremaster first and raised your credit score just the average 61 points, you could have saved $9,000. If you'd have gone to Scoremaster before applying for the home loan and raised your score just the average 61 points, you could have saved almost $100,000. And if you own a business, you know you need great credit. So before you try to get a loan or fund projects or finance equipment, go to Scoremaster first and super boost your business credit score. Scoremaster puts you in control of your finances and not those evil, greedy, avaricious banks. Enroll in minutes and see how many plus points that Scoremaster can add to your credit score. Go to scoremaster.com/JCE. Scoremaster.com/JCE. Don't forget the /JCE, because they'll take extra good care of you if they know that you're in the family. Have you gone there yet?
I haven't, but I anticipate a great response when I go there, and up to 97 points. Oh my God. I can't believe it.
You can't get your credit any higher than 97 unless you Meltzerize the credit scale.
It can always happen. You never know.
Oh, speaking of, I have no way to transition from Meltzerizing your credit score into Mickie James's trash bag, but let's talk about this for a second. What? They sent Mickie James her shit back, some shit they had of hers, in a hefty trash bag. And I mean, I have wrapped clothes to my mother-in-law in a hefty trash bag before and put them in a box, but not to a recently fired employee. That seems just a touch like wiping your feet on somebody, doesn't it?
It does seem a bit harsh.
A bit harsh.
I mean, it was when you say a trash bag, I mean, they are black garbage bags.
Yes.
I mean, it is pretty shocking that this is how WWE deals with their employees or former employees.
Well, and here's the thing, and apparently Mark Carrano's taking the heat for this. People have heard that name. He's been the head guy under Triple H in talent relations over the last, I don't know how many years. But first off, I don't honestly know what they had of hers. I guess now, especially with the girls, they have different outfits and so many costumes and things. And it's, I guess now that they're such a big company, they keep some things, especially since they're only doing TV tapings instead of back in my day, you brought all your shit and you left with your shit. I mean, Vader used to get all kinds of heat for asking him to keep a set of dumbbells on the ring truck so he could work out his shoulder or whatever, right? And they're like, what the fuck? Are we a moving company? I guess now they're big and they keep some of the people's gear or jackets or robes or whatever the case. But in this case, they call her up and fire her, and then they send her shit back to her in a garbage bag. Fuck. And so then immediately when she tweets the picture of it and tells the story, Triple H and Stephanie and several other people apologized on Twitter and said the person responsible for this has been fired. And then we come to find out, I got to be honest with you, I'm smelling shenanigans here. Maybe this was great timing, but do you fire the guy that's been the head of talent relations, at least under Triple H? And I don't know what he's doing since they brought Laurinaitis in last year or whatever. But he's been there for 10, 15 years, and they've fired a couple of other people in the talent relations department. They've demoted a couple of the guys. Rudy Charles, the referee, apparently was working in talent relations. Now he's going back to, and another guy's going back to just being a referee. Brian, I'm asking you as a cynical, corporate-minded fucker, is this just, oh yeah, we're firing the guy that sent the garbage bag, or was this already going to happen? Because Nick Khan's been firing people. They're changing things around. Laurinaitis is back in charge of talent relations. They're bringing the entire first crew of the Titanic back. So did they fire Mark Carrano for the garbage bag incident, or was this just a great way to, we're fucking firing this guy, and he was already on the way out the door anyway?
Well, typically when you have a change of executives or department heads, there usually is a shift in who's working in those divisions. Everyone has their favorites. Everyone has their people they hire. So you'd have to think just maybe in general, Mark Carrano's job would be in jeopardy. However, doing this and thinking you're going to get away with this is crazy, because he sent it to Mickie James, who's pretty active on social media. She tweets it out. Like you said, what she tweeted out was, "Dear Vince McMahon, I'm not sure if you're aware, I did receive my WWE care package today. Thank you. Hashtag always blessed and grateful. Hashtag women's wrestling matters." But I mean, the fact that this guy would just do that, and if someone said, hey, why did you send all the stuff she left behind? We like her. Why did you send her stuff in a garbage bag? What excuse do you have?
Well, in all honesty, I guarantee you that if he's even the one who actually packed the box, Who knows? He's probably like, well, I got to wrap this stuff up so in case the box gets wet or whatever. He's not it unless he had some issue with Mickie James that I'm not aware of, and that'd be between them. I think he probably just. Well, let's put it this way: if she hadn't been fired, if she'd have just called and said, "Hey, can you send my shit back?" She wouldn't even taken a picture. Because, okay, it's a bunch of wrestling gear wrapped in a fucking hefty bag in a box. But the great meaning that's put behind it once it's somebody's fired. And then, by the way, here's your shit in a garbage bag. That's fucking classic. And I don't know whether Mark Carrano even thought of that or not. But what I'm saying is not that he should not have been dressed down for something like that. But I don't believe that they fired him and demoted or got rid of demoted two of the referees that were in the department and got rid of another woman that was working in the department, changed somebody else out just because Mickie James got a garbage bag. I think she gave them a gift that they could say, oh, well, look what we're doing.
Well, the Stephanie and Triple H pounced on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. She doesn't work there anymore. She puts this tweet out. Stephanie replies, I am embarrassed you or anyone else would be treated this way. I apologize personally and on behalf of WWE. The person responsible is no longer with our company. And then right away, Triple H also. Upon learning of the disrespectful treatment some of our recently released talent received on behalf of the company, we took immediate action. The person responsible for this inconsiderate action has been fired and is no longer with WWE. For the record, Mickey's still fired, but so is the guy who sent her the trash bag.
Well, yes, but they should do things like that. Somebody in talent relations that would send somebody their gear after they've just been fired in a trash bag should be fired. Somebody that would send somebody a termination on their wedding day, why they should be. Oh, I forgot. That would be the guy that just fired the other guy. But anyway, but here's the thing about Mark Carrano. I didn't see in my dealings with him a person that would disrespect even like, yeah, we've been waiting for a chance to get so-and-so. He didn't seem like that kind of person. I mean, he's been around the company for years and years, and I'm pretty sure he was in a lower level position during some point in time I was in OVW. But my dealings with him were around the 2017 Hall of Fame. He's the one that called me originally. And as a matter of fact, I remember it was New Year's. It was the week between Christmas and New Year's 2016. Because I remember it might have been New Year's weekend, if that was a weekend or whatever that year. But all of a sudden I get a call like 2 days before New Year's from WWF number and the message from Mark Carrano, have something I want to discuss. So I called him back, and he told me the idea, said he was calling on behalf of Paul, as the young folks call him. And so I said, I doubt very seriously this is going to be the uppermost topic on everybody's mind over New Year's weekend. So now that you presented this idea to me, let me think about it, and I'll call you whatever the day after New Year's was. They were back in the office, probably January 2nd. And to induct the Rock and Roll Express. And then I called him back and or told him what I wanted and asked a couple more clarifying questions. And he said, let me get to Paul on that, and called me back, and everything's set. So he was dealing directly under Triple H for a lot of these things. But the point I was going to make about Mark Carrano is he was easy to work with on the phone. And I think I may have told you when we did a show at the time, for the couple of days, I went and did the pre-tape stuff one day, and then the Hall of Fame thing the next day. And was I over there at the hotel for a couple hours the night before? It was 2 or 3 days that I was involved with that. Mark Carrano almost groveled to me, and I mean, not in a ridiculous way, but he was always, "Are you okay? You need anything? You got this? You got that? What can I do for you?" He was. I wasn't treated that nicely when I worked there. When I was in the office in the car with Vince McMahon, people didn't fucking kowtow to me like that. And I'm just bopping in to do an induction. That's why I said it's better to visit than live there. They treat you like a guest, and then when you live there, they treat you like the fucking drunk uncle that lives in the spare bedroom. But so I don't see anything about Mark Carano that would have been disrespectful, but who knows? I didn't have to put up with him on a regular basis. Maybe a bunch of the boys will contradict me on that, but that's just the fucking garbage bag. I got pissed off, and boy, I called, as a matter of fact, 2 of the people that got thrown in the box and told them how disappointed I was that they went along with that when they did this. They killed all the guys in the Spirit Squad and killed all their careers and put them in the box marked OVW back about, what was it, 2007-ish?
It's a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, I called a couple people that went in that box. I said, you couldn't have just fucking turned around and walked out? But I guess they couldn't, because they still actually wanted to be in the business.
You never told me that part before. You actually got so mad about that, you called up a couple of the actual members of the Spirit Squad?
Yeah, Mondo was one, because I love Mike Mondo, and what a guy he is, what a worker he was, what a talent he was, quality human being. I said, Mondo, I can't believe you went for that. Then I apologized to him later on. Oh yeah, that's why I
Who was the other one?
Probably Jeter.
You saw that Ken Doane just announced that he's retiring?
Yeah, and I wasn't aware that he hadn't before now. Actually, I saw that. I like Ken Doane, okay, but he was young and didn't understand when he was getting heat with some members of the locker room back in those days. But he's older now. But anyway, but yeah, it just. And as I was going to say, I don't remember what year it was, but I didn't. Well, that's when I just determined. It was probably 10 years before the Hall of Fame, because that's when I determined, fuck these the WWF, fuck these motherfuckers. I took that as a grave insult after all fucking, not only all the talent that we had sent them, but all the shit we had put up from that office, and the fucking backstabbing and the fucking lack of preparation and especially under Laurinaitis, the fucking, last minute on the spot changes of shit that's been announced, and just the overall unprofessionalism. But, yeah, it took about 10 years for me to get over that one. I was highly insulted. Anyway, speaking of somebody else that's been highly insulted, apparently now, and this is somehow karma or kismet or poetry in motion or something at work. Uncle Dave Meltzer's favorite wrestler used to be Ric Flair, and now Ric Flair's daughter was to kick Dave Meltzer's ass. How did we get here, Brian? Fill us in.
Well, from what I understand, on one of the audio shows that they do on Dave and Brian Alvarez's website, f4wonline.com, I think, WrestlingObserver.com. They have different website names for reasons I don't understand. But there was an audio show, and a comment was made about the status of Charlotte, who, of course, as we remember from the limited watching we had done, was set up in a feud with Lacey Evans, and then Lacey got pregnant in real life, and They were setting up Charlotte and Asuka, and then they told Charlotte she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And they pulled her off TV.
They wouldn't believe her when she said she wasn't. They pulled her off of WrestleMania. So
Dave reported, and if you want to hear it, I have audio here. It's pretty short. And it is news, and it's going around.
In fairness, this is on Twitter. We're not playing somebody else's audio without permission. This is all over because it's a clip of what he actually said. And in fairness, if we're going to talk about it, we should hear exactly what Dave said, right? So we're not trying to leech off of his program.
That's right. And just to clarify where this started, Charlotte had tweeted out a couple of photos of her. I assume they're recent photos. And it had a quote, "The principle is competing against yourself. It's about self-improvement, about being better than you were the day before." To which an account named Blu-ray Wrestling, the other name is Dave Meltzer Botches, which gives away what the site is, what this account is, I should say. They said, "But Meltzer said you were getting a, quote, complete makeover because you're subconscious about your looks. So here's the audio."
Wait, because you're subconscious about your looks.
Subconscious. So here's the audio. Again, I assume it's from a couple days ago. It's relatively short, but this is from the Wrestling Observer podcast.
Charlotte. Yeah, so the suspension is a cover reason because she's having dental work done. So she's just having a complete makeover, and, that's just basically what's happened. So it's one of those things with, they make you real subconscious about your looks when you're a woman in wrestling. And it's just one of the negatives about it, but it's a reality of it. And so, but that's why she's going to be out. That's why she was suspended.
And there's Dave's quote. So before you comment on that, just to set the tone, coming out of that, which was from this Dave Meltzer Botches account, Charlotte replied, quote tweeted, and said, "Yeah, I just listened. I thought Dave Meltzer would have learned his lesson last time commenting about women's bodies, but apparently I'm fair game. So I get to respond, again, to a rumor about my body. Again. You know what? This is when I stop. Dave, go to hell.
Boo!
You have my phone number. It would take you 30 seconds to ask, as opposed to giving straight crap to your listeners. Grow up. For you, of all people, to comment on a woman's looks. Do you have any shame, decency, or professionalism left at all? Find a mirror. Look hard, Dave." And those are the words tweeted out by Miss Charlotte WWE, or at Miss Charlotte WWE, Charlotte Flair.
I don't know if Dave can see his reflection in a mirror anymore. But, oh my God, first of all, what a ham-tongued thing to say and way to say it. Just first off, apropos with anything, anytime that a man says a woman is self-conscious, not subconscious about her appearance, but self-conscious, whether a woman is self-conscious or not, she's self-conscious about people telling people she's self-conscious. So he was headed down the wrong road there to begin with. Secondly, she's having a complete makeover with dental work, or she's in the middle of she looked pretty goddamn good to begin with. She's looked pretty good for several years that we've been seeing her. She's acknowledged that she had a boob job. I'm trying to see if I can use one hand and count the number of girls in the business that haven't had a boob job, and I've still got some fingers left over. That could easily go south, so I won't make any other comments. But besides, what did she have a hump removed from her back that we were not aware of, Brian? Did she used to be the hunchback of Charlotte, North Carolina? Or, why would he say something like that? And especially if she is having her teeth capped, well, don't we all like to have a nicer smile? But is that, or has she ever had a complete makeover, especially by the standards of people in the entertainment business? I don't think so. But that was just, that makes it sound like it's some cover reason that she's not even having dental work done, that she's going to some clinic in fucking Venezuela or somewhere where they're going to fucking, I don't know, inject her with monkey hormones and take several unnecessary parts off of her body or something. I don't blame her for being pissed off. When something like that is said, what the fuck? Did he have to say that in that way? I mean, he's supposed to be normal, not like me and not give a shit. And why would you do that to Charlotte? One of the few halfway fucking decent talents they've got that doesn't goddamn do anything else stupid or silly or phony or whatever. I don't get the whole fucking deal. What do you think?
Well, I will say I did read in The Observer when Dave reported it in there. He said that Charlotte is out due to oral surgery or dental work. I forget the exact phrasing, but he put who the source was. He said, as reported by this person. So Dave is repeating in this audio what he had heard and what he thinks is a valid story.
Well, it might be a valid story. She's having dental work, but did he have to go on and hypothesize about her mindset about her appearance and or about that give people the impression that she's, having her leprosy removed or whatever.
It was a bit of an awkward phrasing of words and words put together for. I mean, I don't know what he was trying to get at there.
This might be shocking.
I think I know, but
I'm starting to think that Dave Meltzer doesn't know how to get laid. It may be shocking to people he's not a fucking pussy magnet, but he may not know how to talk to women.
Well, he's not trying to get laid on there, but I mean, the other thing is,
I didn't mean from Charlotte. I just mean if that's an example of his fucking communications with the opposite sex. I know a lot of people out there going, Cornette, well, I didn't mess around with the female wrestlers.
The other thing is to look at this from a different point of view and try to have a serious discussion and try to have this discussion in a vacuum. And I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings here or anything. And I don't know exactly what Dave was getting at, but I think I may have a hunch in his own unique way. But, Michael Jackson was the biggest thing in the fucking world in the early 80s. When I was a kid, when I was like 3 years old, Michael Jackson, he was like a pop star superhero. He was massive. And then like around 87, 88, the Bad Album, at a certain point, you couldn't ignore what was a weird, awkward thing, which was Michael looks a lot different than he did.
He's changing.
In the Jackson 5, let alone in the Jacksons, let alone when he went solo. Now he's not so black anymore. He looks white. I mean, at a certain point, you have to acknowledge it. And I will say that there are certain women in wrestling who it appears
who look like a duck-billed platypus.
It appears they have had a lot of, or at least they've had considerable, or they've had any plastic surgery to their face to the point where it changes their appearance, which we know because we see them regularly on TV up to 52 times a year, maybe more. And I think that's where it gets a little awkward because we don't know what the real reason is, or at least Charlotte's saying this is not the real reason.
But Charlotte does not look like that to me. Has she changed drastically from the time we first saw her?
I think, again, talking about this in a vacuum, but I think if you look at photos of Charlotte a few years ago and Charlotte a few years after that and Charlotte now, there are some changes that are, I think, noticeable if you watch the show ever. And we don't watch
She's regularly. Not been turned into the Catwoman. That picture of that Catwoman that wants to be a cat.
She was all over the New York papers years ago. No.
Yeah, we didn't do that. No.
But I think, Dave kind of went to the assumption.
Well, then wouldn't that be an example of in Meltzer's case, Nunya, Dave?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
As long as it's not like everybody, when Charlotte's nose falls off like Michael Jackson's fell off, then maybe we should say, as long as Charlotte's got her nose, leave her the fuck alone.
Well, that's my point. And whether she is or isn't having plastic surgery, assigning it to feelings that you're assuming she has because of the business she's in about her looks, like that's where it's crossing over a line, maybe.
It's like I was tempted when I was on television, a big superstar and traveling the world, to have that dick augmentation. But instead, I said,
Were you now, really?
No, but I was at one point, I was already on the plane to Bolivia. But then I said, no, I'm just going to work with what I got. But I have been in a similar situation, actually a scary similar, when you told me what was going on, because I said, why is Charlotte pissed at Uncle Dave? He told, well, it's over dental work, and I popped. And you don't remember this story, which means I may not have told it in a while. But I got heat with Triple H in China over the exact same thing. In, 1997, I guess. 97 or 98, sometime in that time frame, when I was working in the office in Stamford, and one of the things I was doing, as we've talked about it, was I would work with the third party and independent promoters, the guys that weren't booked all the time, that wanted to wrestle outside shots, could still do that at that point, if it was approved by the audience, by the office. So I would deal with the promoters, find the guys, work with JR on who wasn't booked. And this also went to personal appearances at malls with some of the top guys that weren't wrestling, but they'd be in Hartford, Connecticut. So, this big mall right near Hartford. There was a guy that had a sports card business there and stores and did tons of appearances. I'd book guys for that. Blah, blah, blah. The point is, on one particular afternoon, Bruce calls me and says, China has third-party appearances on Saturday and Sunday doing a signing at X Mall or whatever. She needs to cancel those. I said, okay, why? She's got some dental work she's going to have done. Okay. Because when you have booked a major television wrestling star for a promoter who's advertised and who's got a location and who's got people coming and they're either going to get autographs, they bought a ticket or whatever, when you say, hey, so-and-so ain't coming, what's the first question they ask, Brian? Why? Why isn't so-and-so coming? And so I had to call one or two of these promoters and say, I'm sorry, China can't make it. She's having some dental work done, but we'll get you a replacement. Let's see who we got. Who do you want? And we work and we get a replacement, right? And that would be the same with any of the boys that couldn't do something or got pulled or whatever. So about a week later, I remember plain as day, Bruce calls me again. Well, you got heat with Triple H in China. So what did I do? Well, you told some promoter about her dental work. And he put a period on it, but I'm still waiting for the rest of the explanation because that didn't do it for me, right? And no more came. I said, what? Why are they mad? Well, you told the promoter about their dental work. Or about her dental work. I said, I've heard of guys kayfabe and rehab, but a root canal? What? Explain this to me. That's when he told me the rest of the story. She wasn't going to have a root canal or a goddamn crown put on or whatever. That was part of her restructuring when she looked like Antonio Inoki. They were somehow doing something to make that lantern jaw look less Inoki-ish, right? It was cosmetic, which, as I've mentioned before about cosmetic surgeries, if I'm going to fucking die or be in tremendous pain, I will let a motherfucker operate on me. If not, you're going to have to look at what I got. But so I said, well, what? They're mad. What was I supposed to say? She just don't want to fucking come? Well, you could have made up something. I said, you didn't tell me to make anything up. You didn't tell me to kayfabe. She's going to the goddamn dentist. It's not, yeah, she'll be away for 6 weeks at the dentist. No, it's just a dentist appointment. So anyway, well, you better call him and apologize. So I called her up. I said, China, so I'm sorry. I had no idea what you were doing. And well, it's just that people will be, and I don't want people talking about it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if I'd have gotten all the information, that wouldn't have been said. But it's the same point. There you go. Don't tell anybody when a woman in the wrestling business is going to the dentist. That's just a rule of thumb that you can live by. But you remember when her jaw got less ridiculous?
Of course.
That was the start of that procedure, apparently. And I heard of guys kayfabe and rehab, but root canals? What the fuck? So anyway, they didn't like me from the start, and I wasn't too warm on them either. If we just had some way, Brian, just some way that we could have before and after pictures of different people that we know right in front of us, right on our desk, what they used to look like and what they look like now so we could compare and contrast. I wonder what kind of apparatus we could get to just put on the top of our desk and display any number of photos of anybody that we know or any place we've ever been, and that people could send us pictures that they have that we could see that would pop up in this frame. A frame that you could swipe with your finger to look through the pictures like a slideshow or thank people who send you pictures. A frame, a beautiful decorator frame that you could give to a family member or a close friend or someone that you want to exchange candid photography with. What kind of multimillionaire could you become if you could invent such a wonderful product as that, Brian? What would you call it?
I would probably call it Skylight Frame.
A skylight frame. Well, folks, thank goodness they've already got some kind of product like that. You don't have to kayfabe this thing like Rehab. You can put it right up on your desk or on your wall or in your house or wherever. The skylight frames are perfect gifts, and Mother's Day is coming up. Are you looking for the perfect gift for mom or a potential loved one that gets recognized on Mother's Day? The skylight frames. We've talked about them. I just did a 10-inch touchscreen, gorgeous decorator designer frame. It sets up in under 60 seconds, and people can send you pictures. Different people can send different pictures. One person can send all the pictures. You can send yourself pictures. You can preload it with your mother's favorite pictures and then just give it to her for Mother's Day and watch her turn it on and just leap for joy and be tickled shitless. Surprise them. Or just tell them you're going to do it and then do it and they'll still like it. Regardless, right now, as a special holiday offer, you can get $10 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to Skylight Frame. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME, skylightframe.com, and enter the code DRIVE, DRIVE, skylightframe.com. Enter the code DRIVE, $10 off. I can't say this enough, so I'll say it once more. Skylightframe.com. Enter the code DRIVE, $10 off, because everybody always asks us afterwards, one of these announcements, what was that code again? God damn it. Listen to this program with a pen and a piece of paper. Skylight Frames.
Well, Jim, speaking of really bad transitions, you mentioned at the top that you saw these quotes from CM Punk. Did you read the articles? What have you seen about this?
Well, I have heard that Punk commented on a potential return to professional wrestling. I think to the folks at Sports Illustrated, if I'm going to comment on his comments, at least you read the comments. If you read the comments, I'll comment on the comments.
Okay, I have a couple.
And then we'll see if you have any comments.
I have a couple of quotes here. This, like you said, is from an interview with Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, asking CM Punk about the idea he would potentially return. I don't know, Punk said. I've said no before in interviews. I'm not fishing for a deal. I get offered to do a lot of stuff, and I say no to 90% of it just because my thing is I need to work with quality human beings. It just seems like maybe in pro wrestling there's a lack of quality human beings. I don't know. I like doing fun quality projects. If there's a fun quality project that gets sent my way, I will listen to it. He continued, I don't need the money, and the way the wrestling business is now, it's wacky. You've got WWE, who has multiple billion-dollar television deals, and the television's awful. I go back there, I'm just another guy. And it's not even that. I'd be just another guy that's doing not good television. I want to do stuff that's good. I want my name attached to quality projects where it's fun and it makes people laugh, smile, think, and people don't hate watching it. I want to do fun stuff.
Well, there you go. I understand exactly, and at least he's honest. It's not fun anymore for him. And if it's not fun anymore and you don't need to support yourself with it, why do it? And that's so I can identify with that. And I admire him for saying it because it's true. He's not, and I don't see that him using this as a negotiating thing. Like if Nash was saying this, so of course he's got two people that are trying to offer him something. He's trying to get the most out of one of them. But I don't see Punk saying this as a negotiating tactic. I think he's telling the truth. And as I've said before, I like it when guys leave of their own volition or on their own terms, and he had the best fucking outline ever telling Triple H, I don't need to work with you, you need to work with me, and see ya. I mean, that's the only other closing line that I've ever heard from a guy in the wrestling business. I didn't hear it, but Bill Dundee told the story in Australia for Jim Barnett. This is one of the first stories I heard when I got in the wrestling business. Paul DeMarco, famous wrestler of the 60s and 70s, was also the booker for Barnett at the time. And Dundee said that Paul DeMarco brought the book into Barnett's office and plopped it down on the desk and said, "I have mastered the business and I'm done." And he turned around and went to the airport and flew back to the United States. But there's truth in this. What CM Punk's presence alone, and no taking nothing away from CM Punk's talent, CM Punk's presence alone would not make that television automatically go from rotten to great. So he would be a guy doing not, and I'm sure that people have offered some, I would imagine, variety of independent promoters have offered him. Do you think there's any way that over the last 5 years that independent promoters have not quietly offered CM Punk a lot of money to show up and do something? Is it possible that those offers have not been made in this world?
I think it's possible the offers haven't been made. It's possible that inquiries were made whether they should or shouldn't make an offer.
Well, the point is, if you could even get a hold of him to make an offer, I mean, I've had some wacky fucking suggestions, and even that one of those garbage promotions at one time said I got an email. God, it was one of the WrestleMania weekends. I was going to be somewhere, and I got an email from, I don't know, Oshkosh Wrestling. I don't know. I didn't know anything about them. Just said, inquiring about your availability on such and such date, and to do what? For who? Right? And then I found out it's one of the garbage promotions. But point is, he's had offers. You know, he's had offers, and he hasn't done it because he doesn't need to do it. He doesn't want to do it. And I respect that. And I wish that I had his commitment. Because every time that after I said I was done with the wrestling business a few years ago, every time that I said, well, I like this guy, I could do him a favor, or I got a soft spot there, it's not too far, then it ends up being a rib on me. So for him as exacting as he is, to show up and just to take a check to be on a rotten show and then have people remember, well, the last thing we saw CM Punk on was pretty rotten. He don't want to do that, and I don't blame him.
And he knows that's the reality. If they said, we'll give you $50 million, come back. And he said, you know what? It's so much money, I'm going to do it. He knows the first week there'll be some wacky backstage segment with bad acting, everyone standing at different weird angles, bad humor. He knows exactly what it'll be. The more I see with him giving comments or quotes about modern wrestling and his thoughts on it and how he would fit into it, the more I find myself agreeing with him. He seems like he's really on the money.
Except, here's the thing. Now that you've just said $50 million, as much as I admire him and his honesty and him leaving on his own terms, if somebody said, I'll give you $50 million, I wouldn't blame him if he came back and did it and made fun of doing it and made fun of the idiot that gave him the $50 million and said, look at this rotten shit I was on and I got $50 million. That would probably get him more over than he ever has been. But maybe anything less than that, we'd go back into, I remember CM Punk, he was on that shitty show. But you can't, if you give a shit about what the wrestling business was and is supposed to be, and are not just doing this because you didn't save your fucking money and that's not my fault, that you have to embarrass whoever nameless people I'm talking to out there, that either for one of two reasons, either they didn't save their money, so they have to embarrass themselves on rotten programs for money, or they have money, but for whatever reason they can't get off fucking television, even if it's a rotten show. I don't get that mindset, but that's why for people who gave a fuck about the wrestling business in general and just their contribution in it, formerly being viewed positively. And if you come back and get involved in something like this, how many things did I turn down because the movie The Wrestler, not with Mickey Rourke, not Ed Asner, I didn't want to do autograph shows for a long time after that, because instead of now in my mind, at first it was like, well, even if they're small shows or whatever, if it's close or I get to hang out with so-and-so or, somebody I like is there and we can talk or what. Now it was like, well, anybody that sees me is going to think I need the fucking money to come to this goddamn place and sign these autographs. And then it's like, well, fuck, I've I don't really need the money, but, it'd be nice to go and get it because they're willing to pay me and I'd get to hang out with all these people. But now I feel bad about it. Because people are like, oh, shit, he needs the money too. Because in The Wrestler, everybody's falling asleep, signing autographs in an empty fucking National Guard armory. Or when somebody is trying to book you on a wrestling show, I've mentioned this over the last 4 or 5 years. I did it with Court Bauer and MLW. I did it with the NWA guys. I did it with several different wrestling-related things I've done over the last 5 years. Is the Invisible Man on the card? Is anybody in the middle of a match going to break out into a dance routine? Is there going to be any science fiction, teleportation, fucking children wrestling, whatever the case may be? I had to get assurances from people trying to book me on a wrestling show that it was actually a wrestling show and not a goddamn bunch of caca. Why do I need to go through that all the fucking time? It's the same. Can you imagine the conversations if CM Punk took all his phone calls that he would have with people? I can't imagine, because I don't even talk to any, and haven't for the past 2 or 3 years, or at least any wrestling promoter that I haven't met and don't personally know. And I still have to ask them. So imagine just cold calling. CM Punk would have to, okay, what the fuck is this going to do to my goddamn reputation before I agree to this? So I understand completely. It's not fun, and it's not going to come back, so it's never going to be fun again.
And by the way, just in terms of wanting to negotiate with him, just like Bruno, you had to wait until Triple H made the call because it wasn't going to be Vince. With CM Punk, you probably have to wait till it's not Triple H making the call.
Well, I wonder who's going to be the executive from fucking Amazon that runs the WWE when they own that. That'll be several sales from now.
He's smart, though. He realizes, hey, I'm enjoying my life. I have money. I have success. I have love.
His wife, AJ, did I just see that she is... Because you hear all the time also in wrestling or in anything else, right? Everybody in L.A., they say, is driving an Uber as a screenwriter. So the story was that AJ Lee, Punk's wife, and somebody, I guess, that she works with are going to write a movie script. And I roll my eyes on me. Oh, sure they are, right? It's apparently the sequel to a movie that grossed $150 million.
I just saw that this morning, yeah.
So apparently old AJ Lee is going to be a fucking screenwriter, because that's got to be, if it's the sequel to a movie that grossed $150 million, somebody is not going to just hand this over to some fucking jackleg, right? So they have to have seen some of her work and believe that she can do that. So it's not just like, somebody, his wife is going to write something, or his daughter is going to do something, or his grandmother's going to fucking act in a movie or whatever. This apparently is legitimate. So I have a feeling that I don't need the money is going to be something that Punk says a lot going forward.
And he mentioned quality human beings. And if you don't want to put up with that whole WWE backstage circus behind the scenes and the ass kissing and everything else, if you don't want to deal with any of that, I understand.
Well, and don't just go back there. What would he want to deal with? Whether it's the ass kissing and the politics and the walking on eggshells into WWE, or would he want to show up in AEW with the, all friends wrestling there where they got 6 clicks and he'd be a bigger star than all of them, but they'd figure out a way to fucking nip that in the bud.
Well, my point is he goes to meetings.
Or would he want to? Well, I'm just saying, pick a what wrestling promotion now could serve CM Punk as well as he could serve them, and would be a place that is something that he would want to do.
Without knowing what kind of condition he's in or anything else, because I think he's around my age and he hasn't done this in a while, I think he would be a big service to anyone. But my point is, if he's taking all these meetings in other industries...
Listen to what I said. What wrestling promotion out there could be as much of a service to him as he could be to them?
None of them.
And that's my point. Where would he be put in a position where he'd like it backstage, or he'd like it in the ring, or he wouldn't have to deal with dipshits?
But that was my point. He's dealing with all this stuff in the real world in the entertainment industry where people are probably catering to him when he goes to a meeting or does all these different things, not the backstage world of professional wrestling, which is bullshit. So I don't think any promotion would appeal to him, but especially not WWE. And you're right. There isn't a promotion that offers him more than he offers them, no matter what he brings to the table right now. New Japan, AEW, right. Impact, Ring of Honor. He would bring to them more than they would bring to him.
I could see if he wanted to have a wrestling match with somebody, I can see him doing something with New Japan because they could contract like they did with Jericho. Okay, have a big match or two in a big building and otherwise go on about your business and be free to live a life of religious freedom or whatever. But I don't see why in the world he'd want to be involved in anything with any American promotion because of the various levels of either bullshit you have to put up with behind the scenes or amateur hour bullshit you have to put up with in the ring and behind the scenes.
What if he gets like a Brock Lesnar kind of deal? Not full-time, cherry-pick dates, maybe he takes a little more booking control over his programs than Brock would if they would allow that. What if they came to him with a special package like that? Not being Sting, but being Brock.
Well, who? AEW or WWE?
WWE.
He'd still be on rotten television.
That's true.
So that's we've already established that he would not. If there's the thing, Ring of Honor does great television. He'd actually, and he was obviously over with the Ring of Honor audience that existed 15 years ago. So he could go in and have a match probably with anybody he wanted to in the world. And they would book it, and it's a good television show that we've seen that they were taking the pure tournament and when they were taking the pandemic seriously and all that stuff. But it's better television than fucking WWE or AEW. But they wouldn't be able to pay him. AEW be great television or be a great payoff. The television show is what it is, and it ain't going to get any better unless they revamp everything. And then who would he really want to work with amongst that bunch?
Here's another thing. If he came back in this fantasy world that we're talking about here, if CM Punk came back to wrestling, would he want to wrestle one of the top current guys, or would it entice him if someone put up the money, Punk versus Samoa Joe? The rematch, whatever, 15 years in the making.
Well, but see, here's the thing. He probably would want to have matches with people that he had never worked with because at least it would be new. But the people that he's never worked with, probably there wouldn't be as much money in it as other names that would be bigger that he may have worked with in the past. With Joe, I would say that might be a hard sell just because of the time that's passed, but now with the internet, everybody that ever loved Samoa Joe and CM Punk could tune in simultaneously. Who knows? I don't know if he'd want to do that, because then do they want to do when they're 42 what they did when they were 25 or try to do, and will it measure up? I think he'd probably want something, an opponent new that he hadn't worked with before, to do something different. And I think he would probably want it to be on a good program to where it might actually stand a chance of drawing money in whatever way they were going to try to monetize it, pay-per-view or internet stream or whatever the case. And I don't see anybody around being able to pull all of that off. So we shall see. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, that was kind of it. I was kind of in my head thinking about, imagine if there was an alternate kind of All In, and you took guys like Punk and Samoa Joe, who knows what Joe's going to do. This may be the only time he's a free agent. Maybe not. Maybe he'll be a free agent forever. Who knows? But it gives you a limited window where you could take some of these guys like them and maybe a few other people. You bring people in. Again, you do it like All In, just instead of the Bucks and Omega and Cody, it's Samoa Joe and CM Punk. I wonder how much success there would be for a show like that. You couldn't worry about Livegate because of the pandemic, but in terms of a pay-per-view or an internet pay-per-view, whatever it may be, I wonder how much of a market there would be for something like that.
Yeah, sometimes the time is just not there. The time doesn't come to where something would be perfect. A lot of people asked me, especially every time I'd go to a a fan fest or a comic convention or something in anywhere around East Tennessee, or like at LexCon, because Lexington ain't that far from Knoxville. And several people pitched me the idea, and maybe you want to advertise or contribute or whatever, do a Smoky Mountain Wrestling reunion in Knoxville. The reason I never wanted to do that was because like a reunion card, actually have wrestling and autographs and whole 9 yards, not just like have a fan fest. Besides the fact that everybody at that time, even this was 10 years ago or more, was older. Some people were already gone. And then we've lost more since then. But besides that, I said, why would I want to go and book a place in Knoxville that might seat 1,000 people and maybe draw 700 or 800? Because it was 10 years ago, and even now almost everybody's gone. But why would you want to do that when the promotion that we were running for our major events, we're running the Knoxville Civic Coliseum. We're putting 3,000 or 4,000 people in there. We've got a television program on a local Fox affiliate, and the ratings are good. I didn't see how that you could promote a reunion Smoky Mountain Wrestling show without having a television program, without being a fixture in town anymore, without having a full roster, et cetera, et cetera. You couldn't go to a big building like the Knoxville Coliseum. And so I didn't want to do a reunion show that would be so much smaller and lower budget than what we were doing to begin with. The timing just wasn't there. If it had been, different timing of a different period, and you could still, go back and do something, like Ron Fuller 20 years ago, during the downhill slide of the Attitude Era. He did it in summer 2000. He was doing the K-Town SmackDown series, and he ran Chilhowie Park every Friday night for like 12 weeks all summer, and was doing between 1,000 and 2,000 people. And I remember it's the funniest thing, because his first show, he had almost 2,000 people there, and me and him are standing there side by side, which looked hilarious since he's a foot taller than I am. And he was looking out at the crowd with his mouth open, and I was looking out at the crowd with my mouth open, but our mouths were open for two different reasons. I had sworn, didn't think there was any way in the world, and with no television, just radio and word of mouth and his local promotion, I didn't see how in the world he was going to put 2,000 people in Chilhowie Park for wrestling in that particular time period. And his mouth was open because of all the promotion he did and all the radio and the card that he had, because he'd been away from wrestling for over 10 years. He couldn't imagine there was only 2,000 people there. So he was fucking heart sunk, and I was, wow. Because he didn't realize times had changed. And now try to run a wrestling show in Knoxville, Tennessee, and draw 2,000 people outdoors at Chilhowie Park with no television. And see how far you get. It's just, you used to could do something like that, and about 20 years ago was the time where the downhill slide started. You can't really do that anymore.
And here's the other thing with Punk, and it reminds me of the discussion about Sting versus The Undertaker, and it reminds me of years ago, someone I knew who worked at Epic Records, and he had worked on the Clash on Broadway box set, which is this great box set of the Clash. And this is when Joe Strummer was still alive. I remember saying to him, I really wish the Clash would get back together and do a reunion. And he said, no, you really don't. Like, he got it. Like, it would never be that again. Yeah. It would never be as good. It would never be the same. And we've seen guys make comebacks and they impress. But that's the other thing with Punk. I mean, it more than likely would never be whatever expectation someone has for it if he returned.
Yeah, the discussion of the Undertaker Sting match is right. People wanted to see it more than they would have when they actually saw it, because then somebody has to lose, and it's also not going to be probably what they had in their heads. And so some things are just better left unsaid. But I got people that are saying some things. Let's do some quick emails and then talk about All Petite Wrestling. This is a question. I want to open this up to you, Brian, because I couldn't answer it for this listener, Mason. Hello, Mr. Cornette. I have a long burning. Mason.
Mason the Mutilator?
No, it's not the Mankind gimmick. It's just regular old Mason. From apparently the tri-state area around Huntington, West Virginia. But Mason says, Mr. Cornette, I have a long burning question. I had this long burning thing once, and it took penicillin to get rid. But anyway, I have a long burning question that requires your wrestling history expertise. Growing up, I was raised by my great-grandmother, and in the backyard of her house was a small outbuilding that was made of cinder block. Always curious about the building, I asked her if it was made to store tools and things of that nature, but to my surprise, she replied no. She told me that the outbuilding was made for my great-grandfather to watch his wrestling programs. Confused, I asked why he had to have his own dedicated building to watch wrestling, to which she replied that he became so worked up at presumably the heel on the program at the time that he was unbearable to be in the home with, and their only resolution of the problem was to put him in the backyard at a cinder block room so his ranting and raving would go unheard.
This is incredible.
This is not made up. So this program, to her knowledge, would have been broadcast in the Huntington, West Virginia or tri-state area between 1977 and 1980 during evening hours. Jim, with your vast knowledge of wrestling history, can you name the heel that created such a headache for my great-grandmother that an outbuilding had to be built to contain my great-grandfather's rage? Huntington, West Virginia, between 1977 and 1980, would have been a potpourri. It could have been the ICW television program, the PAFOs. It could have been the late Chic era. It could have been the early Crockett era. Crockett expanded into Cincinnati and was headed up in that direction shortly. The old local West Virginia territory with Shirley Love as the announcer, and that was a guy, and he later became an elected state official in West Virginia.
But also, didn't they have cable? They had cable in parts of West Virginia pretty early on, so it could have been Georgia.
Well, I was about to say by 1980 or thereabouts was the Georgia cable had expanded to Ohio, and Huntington's not far from Columbus, so that area. So there's really no way to tell what program or what specific heel, but we talked about this the other day when I said what I miss about wrestling. You know, not necessarily having to quarantine grandpa out in a cinder block outhouse, but just the emotional investment. And you know he's the same guy that if he was at the show, he would have been the one to fucking come out of his pocket with a knife and cut the baby face loose when he was tied to the rope so his partner could be beaten up by the heels, et cetera, et cetera. That was the emotion in those buildings. Because you can't tell me that if he acted like that at home, what do you think these guys looked like when they got in the wrestling arena? That's the kind of crowd we had, the kind of feedback we had, the kind of emotion we had. That's why all those fucking matches looked so much more. They're not rehearsed. They're not going through the numbers. Even if the guy's work was the shits, it didn't look like everything was just an exhibition being put on in front of people, because you got that feedback and you built on it, and that emotional. I've always said people don't understand that you could actually feel the air pressure of heat in a fucking arena. You could feel it. If you were deaf and blind, you still knew it was going on. And I don't get that anymore, and haven't for a long time. Anyway, another email. This one, we had Grado at the top, and now this is from a relative of a very famous wrestler that we've spoken about on the program. This email is from Ronnie Garvin's father.
What?
Joe Garvin. Ronnie Garvin's father, Joe Garvin. He says, Mr. Cornette, if you are reading this, then I have successfully reached you in the year 2021. My post office is a bit slow, as you can see, as I'm writing this in the year 1987. So slow, in fact, that by the time this reaches you, it will most likely be in a different form of communication. I'm writing to inform you that what you did to my son Ronnie this past week is despicable, and I'm turning you over to the authorities. However, Like the post office, the police around here are a little slow too. You should be expecting a knock on your door at approximately 8:30 a.m. May 4th, 2021. Hopefully, you will still be alive then, you fat bastard. I've heard about your eating habits. My son tells me he's seen you pull the testicles off a bunny and put them on a cheeseburger, you animal-killing piece of shit. I hear you're a Republican, too. Fuck you and your Reagan-loving ass. At least Republicans can only get better from here. Fuck you again, Joe Garvin. That was written, as we mentioned, in 1987. Hello?
Okay.
Ha!
Via email. It got
ha! to you. I'll make you cheerful again. Ha! And one more email. But I assume you won't complain about this. This email is from a fellow named Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
I've heard of him.
Hi, Jim. You're absolutely right about the storage units on Storage Wars. Remember, I said I loved watching Storage Wars until I found out they were salting the units. And then it became fake. And like when you find out shit you liked is fake, you don't watch it anymore, like wrestling, Storage Wars. And Charlie agrees. They are salted, meaning there are valuables planted in them to add drama for the TV series. I run a storage facility with over 400 units. And when we sell them out, they're usually filled with old furniture and household items. Nobody is putting grandma's antique jewelry in a storage unit. The most expensive thing I ever found in a unit was a car. However, the car was stolen and the criminal wasn't too bright because it had a GPS on it. Thanks, Jim, and if you ever have any more storage-related questions, Charlie from Starkville is your guy. That's Charlie from Starkville, Mississippi. Comments on Storage Wars?
I have no comment on that. I think it summed everything up nicely.
Comments on Charlie from Starkville, Mississippi?
A clue for all the Charlie seekers out there, he works in storage.
You know, that's going to be a big thing. They might do a reality show about that. People trying to track Charlie down in Starkville. And get even. You can track him down on your programs this week, can't you? What are you doing on those things these days?
Another action-packed week of programming on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all shows on Twitter at Super Podcasts or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. The latest episode of the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast is out right now. A special edition. Part 1 of a multiple-part look at Crockett Cup 86. Check it out today. Mike Sempervive goes deep inside the joint venture between Jim Crockett Promotions and Mid-South Sports. Get all
deep
the
inside.
Deep inside Mid-South Sports. But there's so many things I could say right now. But hear more from Mike Sempervive at midatlanticpod.com. Or search
Does
for
he
the
go
Mid-Atlantic,
deep inside the Welcher, Katsaboulis?
Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcast. He doesn't, because that was 1982, early 82, not 1986, which of course is the period we're talking about here. Speaking of periods that we talk about this week on John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Then and Now, available at pwspod.com. or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. It is part 1 of a look at Pro Wrestling Spotlight from February 3rd, 1990, a roundtable discussion John puts together with Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Steve Beverly of MatWatch, and Lanny Poffo of his own poetry collection to talk about the Persian Gulf War, the exploitation of it by the WWF and even WCW, as well as the booking of Sergeant Slaughter as a Iraqi sympathizer leading into the match with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 7. The venue for WrestleMania 7 has just changed. Check out this amazing time capsule with amazing insight and news coverage, plus some just craziness from Lanny Poffo about how any criticism about Vince McMahon is based on jealousy, and you got to hear it to believe it. pwspod.com or search for John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Then and Now, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Go through the archive today at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast. New episode in production right now. Stay tuned for more information. The Mothership. The Mothership. Hee-haw, the Mothership.
I didn't know I could do that. I wonder what if I do something else. Oh, yeah. All righty then. There's more wrestling.
There was indeed more wrestling. Would you like to speak about the AEW Dynamite program for this week?
I wouldn't phrase it like that. I wouldn't like to, but I feel we must. We promised. It wasn't as rotten as normal this week because did you notice the members of the elite were kept to a minimum and disappeared at the end of the program? Maybe that'll be, like Amelia Earhart. We'll never see them again. I wish they'd have taken the bus too, but we'll go through it. But I don't know how that they can do shit that makes so little sense without actually sitting down and saying, how can we make this not make sense? Can you make sense of that, Brian?
No, what you mean is how could we make this make sense? Not how could we make this not make sense?
No, what I said was I don't see how they can make it make less sense if they sat down and said, how can we make this not make sense?
I see that. Okay.
A lot of this. Anyway, we started off promising Ricky Starks. We like Ricky Starks. He can talk. He can work. Looks good. Against Adam Page. Heel versus babyface. That's better than we mostly get. And I must say, I like Absolute Ricky Starks better than Stroke Daddy, which was when he did the NWA thing about a year and a half ago. He was Stroke Daddy. Absolute Ricky Starks. He's grown up. He did a good promo. He looks good. My question to you about Adam Page is he anywhere near as over, as hot, as popular, as figured in, as whatever as he was when they went on the air a year and a half ago? Of all of the young, new, unseen talent that they had, he was the guy that everybody said, well, this guy's a future champion. He's a star. He can't go wrong. And somehow they have made him wishy-washy and stupid and drunk and depressed and back and forth, and then put him in literally a group of jobber children with masks on. And now he's still doing the same shit that he was doing a year and a half ago, but it's to much less impact to me all the way around. What about you?
I agree, but I mean, a lot of it is there are no fans there because he was someone who started getting an organic reaction from the fans. And then since the breakup of the tag team with Omega and the match they had, it's all been him with the Dark Order. Just really bad. It took a guy.
Well, but that's why I'm saying it's not even, I get what your point with the COVID. It's not even no fans there because he was getting over organically and cowboy shit. They don't even talk about the shit the fans that were there used to talk about. Cowboy shit went away, even though they can cuss like Cartman, with Tourette's on every program, because I guess TNT says, okay, we got guys watching, so let them say shit and son of a bitch. But just, he's not figured in. He's floundering. There's nothing going on with him in their universe, in their story, in their logic that we would give a shit about, and he's fucking buying lawnmowers and giving Dark Order jobbers rides to ice cream. They have blown this fucking guy.
I agree, and I think there's something to be said where if you have a year and a half before you want him to be in there with Omega again, you want him to get the title, whatever it is.
I don't want him in there with Omega again.
But not you, but the booker in AEW. If you have a while before he's going to be doing that main event program, I understand cooling him off a little bit, doing something different with him a little bit before they reconvene. But the stuff with the Dark Order in him is really bad.
When you cool somebody off, if you've got a star wrestling attraction, but you don't want to feature them constantly because people can't even eat steak every day, blah, blah, blah. When you cool them off, that just means that you take them out of active programs and just expose them on a regular basis, getting wins and speaking. And not necessarily every week, but every time people see them, they win. They just don't win in something that requires a program. When you cool somebody off, that doesn't mean that you fucking do things detracting from their star power. It just means that you don't feature them constantly. You keep them as good as they are. You just don't push them right now, but you keep them there and then you push them later. You don't tear them completely the fuck down and make them irrelevant and meaningless. And then, later on, we're going to put him in the main event again. Well, guess what? That horse has left the barn. Anyway, they did good athletic stuff. I think Ricky Starks needs work on his facials when he's selling. If anybody's out there taking notes or listening, I like you, Ricky. When you're on offense, you get the mean face, you get the heel face. You're reacting to what you're doing. But when you're on defense and somebody else is doing the shit, you've got the blank face because you're waiting for them to do their shit. You're making sure you're in the right, and blah, blah, blah. He needs to work on his facials when he's selling. Page is fucking strong as an ox, the way he picks people up and catches them and slings them around. It belies his look. Hook looks like he just walked away from a juvenile home. I'm not sure what his gimmick is going to be. Taz is so superior to X-Lax on color. I don't know why they haven't made that change now. He's more professional and more credible because he's actually been somebody in wrestling as opposed to a fucking wannabe outlaw local goof that somehow 20 years later thinks people give a fuck about his fucking outlaw gimmick. Did you see the spot where Page German suplex Starks right on his head and he didn't sell it? He didn't sell it because he was supposed to land on his feet. So he lands on his head, pops up, and doesn't sell it. God damn it. Go with the flow, kid. If you know you got thrown on your head, sell it. It doesn't matter what the fucking spot is. If you can work, you can get back to it. And that was what I noticed in this match. Even though they're both very athletic and they're both very good, they need to grab the holds before they move to the next one. They need to cinch in on something before they reverse it or get out of it. They're just going from emotion to emotion. I'm going to get a headlock on you because you're going to shoot me off, and I'm going to swing and you're going to duck. They're not grabbing the headlock and sitting down on it where the guy has to struggle for a second to fucking throw the guy off. I'm not talking about taking him over to hip lock and fucking holding the headlock for 3 minutes. Grab the hold, cinch the hold, let the guy struggle for a second, let him throw you off. When you're thrown off, you're fucking off balance. So when you hit the ropes, you're coming back trying to fucking regain it. He's going to try to do something. They're just walking through the moves like it's Western swing dancing. And I know that's a modern thing, but these guys are good enough to do it the right way. They went so fast for so long, they got bogged down a little bit. But then Page hits the SOS, the fall-away slam. Hall named it the sack of shit, SOS. Well, whenever you hear somebody call it the SOS, it's a sack of shit. The fall-away slam off the top, rope, doesn't even cover him. As soon as he gets up, Page hits him with a big clothesline, then covers him and gets a 2 count. So the sack of shit off the top rope wasn't enough for the cover. Had to hit the clothesline too, and then the guy kicks out of both things. Adam Page is young and inexperienced, we know, but somebody could have told him, dumb shit, cover after the sack of shit because he's going to kick out anyway. You hit him with a clothesline, now you've just thrown him off the top rope and hit him with a big clothesline, you still can't beat him. It doesn't make sense. Starks ducked the buckshot lariat, hit a great spear. That was a 2 count. That would have been a perfect finish if Page was going to lose. But he wasn't, which is why actually the sack of shit off the top might have been a great finish. But anyway, after they did all these big moves that looked really good, then Starks went for a power bomb. Paige sat down and got up. They did sloppy reversals trying to climb down each other's back out of the power bomb. And then Paige got him in a fucking choke and tapped him out with a neck and ankle hold, which was so exciting. I'm almost distracted from scratching my fucking crotch. The guy that's going to win the match just hit the fucking heel with a sack of shit slam off the top rope. But yet they've got to do 3 or 4 other moves so that he can tap him out with a fucking... And then your heel's tapped out, and your babyface won with a fucking boring hold after that giant maneuver he just did. They can't leave well enough alone. Speaking of not leaving well enough alone, as soon as Paige wins, Taz starts cutting a promo on him, and Hook comes in and chop blocks him from behind and starts putting the boots to him. And that's where I started going, not ha, but ooh, ooh, ooh.
Well, look, he dropped out of wrestling school. He was pulled out of Cody's class.
I don't know how long he's been training. I don't know how old he is. I figured with his dad being in the business for that long, this might be, I was hoping for good. This might be a tough project, because watching Hook throw kicks and his body language, and everybody's going to say, well, he's just training and he hasn't been in the ring and blah, blah, blah. This is green for green, those kicks that I saw. I don't know how everybody else took them, but this might be a tough little fucking row to hoe for Hook. He's not a natural, it doesn't look like. But anyway, then Brian Cage comes in, and before he gets to powerbomb Paige, 18 members of the Dork Order hit, and the heels powder. So it was a good match with a rotten finish and a stupid afterbirth. I guess that's all we can hope for. What'd you think?
Well, once again, I continued my experiment from last week, trying to meld the worlds of professional wrestling and scientific discovery to discover how one accepts AEW if they are completely stoned. So once again, I got really, really high before AEW Dynamite this week.
And it's all for the people.
And I like it.
You're doing this all for the people. It's for science.
That's right.
Science and the people.
And the buzz and the people. And I really enjoyed the match. I didn't like the sack of shit spot when it happened. I just thought it looked like it was too clunky to set it up for it to happen.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, I'm grading on a curve here because in actuality, all these guys, when 2 grown men that are supposed to be fighting each other stand up both feet on the top rope and steady themselves in order to give a move, it's phony as a football bat anyway, but I'm grading on a curve here. Go ahead.
But I enjoyed the match. Happy to see Ricky Starks get some time on TV. I think he is so talented. I understand what you're saying, but I thought, especially at the end of the match, I thought his facial expressions were fantastic at the end of the match. Taz cracks me up. To me, he's so funny because his stable is always getting punked. Well, like when he said, hey, Taz, look, well, not Taz, but, hey, Adam Page, look behind your back. Look right behind your back. And there's Hook, and Hook lifts his arms, like he flaps his wings when he delivers a stomp. You know what I'm talking about? Like every time he stomped,
and he's kicking
his
sideways.
arms went up. Yeah.
He's kicking sideways. But yeah, you hit something there. Taz talks like his group is, and all kudos to him. Because you got to. Talks like his group is a bunch of badasses, and they're just punked out in every appearance, every opportunity.
Every appearance.
It takes 5 of them to do anything, and they still run.
The gang that couldn't shoot straight. But I get a kick out of him. Out of all the factions there, because Taz is so good, and there was nothing even talked about with the whole Brian Cage threatening to leave and having problems with everyone else. Not even referenced at all here. Hated the Dark Order running in. Other than that, I enjoyed it. Good opening segment.
Team Taz is kind of like if some badass came out and said, I want to introduce you to my crew. It's going to kick your ass. Right here is Archie Andrews. This is best friend Jughead P. Jones. And their girls, Betty and Veronica.
Harvey Comics.
Anyway, the Elite have their own trailer, and there's 15 of them now. There's Callis, There's the Cucamonga Kids. There's the Good Brothers. There's Harpo Fingerfuck or Twinkle Toes McFingerbang, whatever name he's going under this week. There's they've got a couple of stooges that are real life stooges. I guess apparently they talked Tony Khan into hiring that fucking Nakazawa just so he could stooge around for old fucking Twinkle Toes. And they go into one of these big customized trailers because they're the stars, and there they are. Explain the next match to me, Lucy. Penthouse with Alex Abrahantes, the translator, the Spanish translator, took on Trent. They are now announcing Trent, one name Trent with a question mark. Now they're not sure that his name is Trent. Even the ring announcer, Happy Face McFuckface, announced him as Trent? What the fuck is this all about?
I have no idea. I was thinking when it was happening, have they done this and I just never noticed it before? Or is this the first time?
It's Trent with a question mark. He's announced as Trent, and the announcers made fun of it because they said, well, what does this mean? Well, we don't even think Trent knows.
I don't even think they know. There's so much that happens on this show that I'm like, does Jim Ross have any idea what's happening?
No,
right
the
now?
announcers didn't know, because I can tell you one rule of announcing is if you know something about the talent on screen, don't ask, say, can somebody explain to me why the fuck they're doing this? Alex Abrahantes, they did the inset interview, and he translated for Penthouse, and he's fucking fantastic. Well, he was fantastic, so we saw him later on. But he's fantastic. He's this could be a new age manager of the translator. Heyman is the advocate for Brock Lesnar because he knows that Vince McMahon doesn't like the name or the idea of managers. So, he came up, I'm sure, with advocate. But Brock Lesnar, it doesn't make sense, of course, because Brock Lesnar is not a downtrodden, a race of people or a sexual problems or goddamn abuse of the elderly or something that people need to be out advocating for or against. He's a wrestler, and wrestlers, like boxers and fighters, have managers. So advocate means nothing. It's meaningless. But a translator works here because the fucking guy can't speak English. So if the manager's the translator, you call him the translator, he's still the manager, it works. I love it. I loved him until they ruined him 10 minutes later. And I didn't know what the fuck Trent was. Speaking of the announcers not knowing what's going on, that stupid thing that Penthouse does in every single match where he takes his glove off one finger at a time and throws it at the guy? Or slaps him in the face with it. I had to call that once in MLW. By the time he got the second finger out, I'd have just kicked him in the nuts if I was his opponent. But nevertheless, Shivani missed the glove spot because they were talking amongst each other. And when he threw the glove at Trent, Tony said, he's thrown something out at Orange Cassidy. We've said this before. I'll make it short. Trent has size, he has a look, he's in shape, and he looks like he can work. He could at least do the moves, even if mentally he's apparently a fucking buffoon. But the way he's been booked, his whole presentation, the people he's been surrounded with, being partners with fucking hatchet-faced Chucklefuck Taylor and having this goddamn goofy mascot in his corner, the stupid angles, the silliness with his mother in the minivan. He's not, they've taken a guy that you could have done something with and he's not worth shit on the card. He's not worth one of those nameless mask-wearing paid extras on the card. His name means absolutely nothing because they have just neutralized him whatsoever. And then just as I was writing, he's less than over, he's under. He overshot fucking Penthouse on a dive out of the ring and almost killed himself. And this match, they did shit back and forth to each other until you get tired of it. It's what this match was. And then they go to the break. And then they came back. And after the break, the announcer said it was back and forth during the break, like that was any different from the rest of the match. It's back and forth. They're doing shit to each other until you get tired of it. No rhyme or reason. Trent gave Penthouse a pile driver on the apron. Just a fucking moron. And then a spear on the floor and didn't beat anybody with all of that. But right after he pile drived the guy on the apron and speared him on the floor, then old Alex jumps up to tell Trent that he, his friends, and his mother suck. Penthouse says your friends suck, you suck, and your mother sucks. So a guy's just been given a pile driver, a deadly move that has, in fact, legitimately crippled people in the past on the hardest part of the ring, and he's laying out on the floor, and his manager says, Penthouse says you all suck and your mother sucks. And then so Trent runs out and runs Alex into the ring, and Alex is cowering from him in the ring, and the referee's watching this, and then Pockets got behind Alex, and then as Pockets was going to Pearl Harbor Alex, Penthouse came from behind while the referee was, I don't know, masturbating in the corner somewhere. And Penthouse super kicked Pockets out of his fucking shoes. Trent tried to clothesline Penthouse, and Penthouse pretty much forgot to duck, but Trent swung way up and over his head anyway, the kind of shit that I used to pull people out of class in training school and tell them until they could fucking figure out how to do it right, don't do it at all. The up and over. First thing I was told, don't swing up and over. Swing at the guy's head. If he don't duck, it's his fault. Apologize afterwards. Anyway, fake up and over by Trent because Penthouse forgot to duck. Then Alex hit Trent with the microphone. This is all in the ring. And the corpse referee, whatever his name is,
Rick Knox,
the corpse, is pretending not to see any of this. And then Penthouse gives Trent a pile driver in the ring. The same thing that Trent gave Penthouse on the apron, couldn't beat him, but Penthouse gives Trent one in the ring. 1, 2, 3. I will say this, either whoever the fuck laid this finish out is a complete amateur moron, or the execution of it was so incredibly rotten that it didn't look like it was supposed to begin with. One of those two things happened here because, I mean, there's not even any way if you'd even walked through this in the locker room that you wouldn't see how stupid it looked, much less doing it in the ring. And I know they practice everything they do these days. What'd you think?
Well, I was high, so I probably enjoyed it a little more than you did. I love Alex. I don't even know what his last name is. Alex the translator. I think he is fantastic. Just his face when he does those interviews, and then when he jumps in finally, Penta says this and this. I liked him at ringside. I don't blame him for the bad booking. But him coming out there.
But here's the thing. He's obviously never, I think he's really an announcer. I think he's one of the Spanish language announcers. Don't have this fucking guy get physical on national television when he's never done it before and it looks like shit. Yes, that's what I'm saying. They got something good here. Guy's got great facials. He can cut a hell of a heel promo. He can fucking talk. So what do? They throw him out there and have him do something he's complete shit at on television and fucking show that.
Well, beyond him getting involved physically, I thought he was great at ringside. I laughed my ass off when he got on the mic and he said, in the middle of the match, Penta says that you suck, your friends suck, and your mother sucks.
But see, again, this guy could get legitimate heat. Even when all the people know that the business is bullshit, this guy could come off like an asshole and he could get people mad at him. I can see somebody maybe taking a couple drinks, taking a swing at him, which is, if he's doing this is what he should want to happen, right? So then when his guy has just been pile driven and fucking beaten up and is losing, yes, you have the manager distract the babyface. You don't have him get up there and say funny shit to make people laugh. That's the thing. They're just making this guy into a goof now because everybody's got to be goofy and silly because that's their mindset. So I liked him up until that. And now between your mom sucks at a crucial point going into the finish of the match, and then the inexplicably just rotten fucking amateur finish is. I don't like this guy anymore.
It's not his fault. Will you stop? I also liked when he was in the ring, like you said, and Orange Cassidy came to confront him, which he came by doing his stupid hands up, hands in the pockets. That's when Penta just wiped him out with a super kick. I popped for that.
I enjoyed that.
I've always said that I was never really interested in Penta. I didn't get it. I like him a lot more having this guy at ringside and this guy do the promos. Not that I was crazy about all the stuff in the match, but they have something there with those two.
Yeah, it adds to, because let's face it, Penthouse is another masked Mexican guy that you can't see his face, can't see his expressions. He doesn't speak English very well, so he can't communicate. So it's basically people are going to watch him that want to see guys do flips and shit. But putting Alex with him, now you got a mouthpiece. Now, if he was booked in a serious program, like that would ever happen here, you might could get some heat out of it and have an attraction there. Anyway, JR did a sit down. Remember how JR's sit down with Mankind changed the course of Mick Foley's career?
Of course.
Everybody else does too. So that's why now they put JR in a chair so he can sit down next to the guys and then let JR do absolutely nothing and let the guys just talk. And honestly, if you're going to let a guy just talk, MJF is the one to do it. But they did a couple of other things here. For one thing, now Shawn Spears' hair, his mohawk, and his beard are not just black, but Bill Dundee black, which, as we all know, is so black, lightning bugs follow him around in the daytime. It's so black that spaceships get lost in its vastness. Will they ever just decide on what they want this guy to look like? Is there any way they can give him a look where he looks like something, or is that just a lost cause?
I've said it before. I don't see anything with Shawn Spears. But the boys like him.
Well, hey, that's a wonderful thing. Wardlow, we've said, what potential? He's big and he's huge. He's going to be a star, blah, blah, blah. Of course, they've botched his booking as a physical threat, but you still didn't know because he never speaks. You still didn't know he was a complete phony. But now you know he's a complete phony because they let him speak. Wardlow gets over if he doesn't speak, and he gets less over the longer he does speak. This was a hostage statement, prepared promo with no emotion. And there's a place for that. It's called local television. Experience somewhere out of the way where people aren't fucking paying attention to you. Don't let this guy talk when he can on national television when all he does is recite shit that either he's written or somebody has written for him. Especially when you've got MJF there to talk, who handled everything just fine. It was a great promo. It was framed and shot horribly. For most of it, it was a promo. It was a shot of MJF and fucking Dax's left shoulder. But MJF did a tremendous job, and everything else here was not a tremendous job. But at least they gave MJF some time to speak. Imagine what he could be doing right now if people hadn't seen him doing a goddamn dinner theater two-step 6 months ago or whatever. So what did you think of the next match, Brian? Ty Conti and Hikaru Shida. What do you give me your impressions first?
I went into it open-minded and stoned, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Ty Conti has...
this is going to get old with you being a drug addict now. Or what's next? You're going to rob a bank?
You know what? Hikaru Shida may have my favorite theme music of anyone in AEW. I really like it. Puts me in a good mood. It was an all right match. Ty Conti has a lot of potential. I keep reading these interviews or these comments that Hikaru Shida's dream is the not main event necessarily, but to be AEW Women's Champion on a show with a lot of fans, which makes me think maybe they're holding off on any title change for a while.
Oh, good. Just so she can have her dream?
Well, that's what wrestling's about. It's about taking these young athletes and having all their dreams come true.
Can you imagine what would have been said if somebody had asked me when I was a booker, or if I had asked anybody, any booker I ever worked for, say, could you hold off switching the belts until there was a real big crowd there?
Well, no, we don't know that she did that. We only know that she said it to someone who reported it in various news sites. We don't know that the conversation...
And I can believe that they would then humor her. Oh, well, let's make sure we don't hurt Sheeta's feelings. Well, I'll tell you what I thought of it. I thought they used up 18 minutes of national TV time with their phony bullshit, and I skipped it. And I don't know what her music sounds like because I skip all the entrances because that takes less time to watch this fucking program. Because I wanted to see what Chris Jericho and his group, the Dinner Circle, have to say for themselves. I stole that off Twitter. Somebody said Jericho isn't running the Inner Circle, he's running the Dinner Circle. And I agree. In 2 weeks, Chris Jericho has gone from former evil heel coming back for revenge to full-on smiling, crowd pandering, you guys are great babyface. And I know he knows how to work as both a heel and a babyface, but a lot of times, even guys you would think, don't know how to switch. And the rule of thumb in my mind has always been, and the best heel to babyface switches that I've ever seen or that have drawn the most money in the history of the territories basically worked like this. When the heel switches, he's still the same fucking dirty heel, but the people want to see him pull all of his dirty tricks and cheap tactics and shortcuts and fucking foreign objects and whatever on that goddamn new heel that he's mad at. They want to see the heel be a heel against the other heels. They don't want to see the heel immediately come out now that he's switched babyface and be smiling and happy and hug their kids. And
that's what WWE does.
Well, and that's not right. Imagine that. They do something not right. That's what I followed when the Midnight Express switched heel or switched babyface. When I switched babyface, I followed that principle, and it worked as long as I had somebody in the opposite corner, Paul E., so the odds were even, and as long as the Midnight were still allowed to do their shit that they did as heels that got them over, which the original Midnight were willing to let them do. But once we lost either of those things, in terms of matches in the ring, when the Midnight would wrestle fucking Fatu and Samu, and all they wanted to do was their shit because they were being egged on by the booker that was about to be fired, George Scott, and we couldn't have a goddamn match with them because all they wanted to do was their shit and sell each other missed headbutts or whatever, then the matches were shit because the Midnight couldn't do their heel shit, and even though Paul E. was in the Samoans' corner, then when we would go against heels that had no manager, then I was a fucking spare prick at the wedding. So, and a lot of times heels have fallen into that trap where they start working like baby faces and acting like baby faces. And obviously you have to an extent because you can't fuck the matchup and have the heel work like a heel and the new baby face, old heel work still like a heel and the other guy work like a baby face. You can't do that. But the heel still has to be heelish and do some of his shit that got him over. And even Lawler, after a while, when he switched babyface the first full-fledged time in 77, by about after the Joe LeDuc program, about mid-late 78, he was having to start cutting the promos. You're going to see the old king come back. Because all of a sudden he was a babyface who was getting taken advantage of by the other heels. And the fans remembered, well, this guy used to be the dirtiest motherfucker and he'd fucked everybody. So he would have to tease that. He'd throw the fire, he'd pull out a chain, or he'd do heelish shit in the babyface position to get the people to stay behind him. Anyway, they're selling Blood and Guts on free TV, the first ever meeting between these two groups, one group of whom didn't exist this time last month, after they've already beaten up the heels and blown off all the heat they got when they attacked the Inner Circle to begin with. Now, because the booker's a mark and wanted to have war games and didn't get to, now they're going to shoehorn it in here on free television and not sell any fucking tickets to it whatsoever and have the ultimate blow-off match as the first meeting, which, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, is like coming and then continuing to fuck for the next 30 minutes. Santana did a good promo here. He has talent. He doesn't get a chance to speak seriously very often, but he did well. And, you know, we've talked about he's got certain, he's got something to him, and his work when they're on, he's not bad. I wish Jericho would get some new lines, because he says that MJF was reciting his drama class lines his teacher gave him out of a script and has no conviction. They're going to the bone with each other, aren't they? Now everybody's upset when I say that. And actually, I say it about everybody except MJF, but they're upset when I say it, when Jericho says it. Well, then Jericho sang a show tune about MJF and botched the lyrics somehow, because I can't imagine he started that with that finish. He tried. Then after he's singing a show tune and has told some jokes, he tried to finish serious with violence and promising blood and guts. And next week, the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle are going to meet to discuss the battle plan. That's a thing that's always done, right? According to Chris Jericho.
They're going to parlay.
What, did he used to work for the United States Cavalry, or what is his? So basically, they're advertising they're going to have these two groups face to face, so they'll have another angle, physical angle next week that will take more oomph off of their TV match the week after. I had to go get some ice cream and cake at that point. I just needed a refresher.
They finally get War Games, and they do the worst build you could possibly do to having War Games. We could talk about the fact they didn't even put it on their pay-per-view. It's going to be on free TV.
Yeah.
So we'll see how bloody it is or isn't. But this whole build, which to me, it's over based on the Inner Circle getting their revenge, but they're still mad they didn't get enough revenge. But these promos aren't helping anyone. Jericho wants to do his brand of comedy and his brand of entertainment, and then try to convince you that he's serious for a second, and then next week, the parlay between the two teams. This was needed. We've taken all of their heat. Now we're going to stand in front of them again before the match.
And berate them, and we're all going to decide what the rules are in this match where there's no rules.
There are rules. There are defined rules for a War Games match. If they're going to use them or not, we'll see. Will there be a roof on the cage or not? We'll see.
Well, yes, there's rules of how the match takes place, but actually it's a no DQ match because it's an ultimate violent blow-off. And so what do they need to discuss?
Hey, let me ask you this, knowing what a big mark, in the nicest way, in the positive way, Tony Khan is, do you think they bring JJ back to do the coin toss? Right, wouldn't the Pinnacle bring him in? He's had so much success.
I think they would, but if that's the case, then somebody needs to keep an eye out for the coin and make sure it's not that two-headed coin he used to use. Anyway, so the next match was Billy Gunn against QT Marshall in this tale of betrayal and resentment where QT has just broken out. And by the way, where was Cody? Cody was. We didn't see a lot of the EVPs. Maybe that's why this show didn't completely suck.
Well, have you ever noticed Cody's booking seems to be, I come out for a promo, I get interrupted, I have a match, you don't see me for 6 weeks. Yeah. It seems to be what it is because, again, Cody was the one that QT and his boys beat up, and now it's everyone but Cody until Cody makes his big dramatic return that are defending Cody from QT Marshall and his gang of men.
Well, QT and Anthony Ogogo, the boxer, did an emotionless, memorized promo to start this out. And, I can understand Ogogo. He's British and he's green. I wish QT would have done a second take on that one because it's just, there's no realism in their tones of any of their voices. Anyway, this one had a jump start, but Billy Gunn jump started. He just attacked QT and all of his stooges, Solo and the caveman, what's his, Camarado. So the Billy Gunn, who's in the best shape of his life, it looks like, as far as cosmetically, I can see he doesn't move as fast as he did 25 years ago, but he's fucking 57 and looks like that. Amazing. But he just beat the shit out of QT and any of QT's stooges. At one point, he shot QT off, and QT did the Ray Stevens upside down into the turnbuckle in the match right after Trent just did it. But they just do it. They just run and do it. They went through a nice little match, but there wasn't a lot of life or interest in this because of there's no interest in this issue. There was no oomph in this. It was, as I said, it's mostly Billy Gunn kicking QT's ass. So how good of a trainer did Cody pick to run his school if the 60-year-old guy can come in and kick the shit out of him endlessly? And then the kids and the Stooges got in a brawl at ringside. The Gunn kids and the fucking QT Stooges, they get in a big multi-man brawl, and you know what they did, Brian? You remember what they did, what we call it?
Lazy booking?
No.
Oh.
They fought off.
They fought off.
They got in a fight in one place, and of course, every time you get in a fight, you try to keep moving to where the end of your fight takes place, hundreds of yards from the beginning of the fight, right? They got in a fight, and they fought off. That's the way they call it in the finish, and you guys fight off. So they just fought out of the fucking outdoor amphitheater and are never seen again until the match is over. And then suddenly they reappear instantly. So the match continued. QT got a little bit of offense. Billy Gunn made a big comeback. And then QT takes a bump out on the stage. Billy goes and gets him, half-ass chucks him back in the ring. In a working way, acts like he's rushing to step into the ring, but meanwhile he's waiting on the guy, and a go-go comes out and gut shots him again behind the referee's back. 1, 2, 3. So, yes, and for everybody who said, well, that's a real punch in boxing. Yes, of course it is. But unless he's really going to punch him in the solar plexus or whatever and knock the fuck out of him, it looks like shit in a fucking worked environment if you're going to have a boxer throw a knockout punch, have him throw it to the face. But besides that, the referees are turning their backs on shit that are happening 10 feet away from them that are making noise that you could hear. It's just, and it's all in the same shot. Anyway, rotten finish again. Billy Gunn got fucked 1, 2, 3, but there's an afterbirth. Because since there's the Rhodes family members involved, they got to do Dusty's angles over. Did you see QT Marshall go out underneath the ring, Brian? And in your altered state of reality, maybe you didn't believe your eyes what you were seeing. He pulled out a midget's wooden deck chair. It was like one of those wooden deck chairs. What do they call those? Adirondack chairs? Except it was only about 2 feet long. A human being could not have sat in this chair. A wooden midget's deck chair, which was obviously gimmicked from the start because he was holding it like a Fabergé egg. And when he swung at fucking Billy Gunn, no, Dustin came out. And QT swings the chair and Dustin ducks and he misses it and QT bends over and then sets the chair down gently on the ground and then stands up and turns around and takes Dustin's comeback. And then Dustin gets the chair and broke it over Camarado's head, the caveman who wasn't supposed to sell it because that's the idea. You break the chair over the guy's head and he doesn't sell it. But after they've shown that it was gimmicked, and then when he swung it, and it was a comedy chair to begin with, it was like they got a chair from some fucking toy company that it puts it in doll sets, and it just flew into a million pieces, looked like it was made out of balsa wood. Was that the fakest looking, silliest looking, hit somebody over the head with a chair spot you've ever seen?
Well, it certainly was telegraphed. As soon as you see that wooden chair, not even talking about the size of it.
Yes.
But there are no venues with wooden chairs like that in 2021. When
No.
Dusty used it on Big Bubba, you know what? They're in the Carolinas. There's a chance there may be a chair.
No, there wasn't just a chance. Everybody at ringside was sitting in one. It was a chair from the back of the Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium. That's where they got it. In the fucking back. They've still got Crockett's old ring stored there 30 years later. But that's the thing. You had Bubba Rogers that was huge and already in a goddamn main spot and being pushed. And you have Dusty Rhodes, the biggest babyface in the company. And you have a chair that came from the fucking, I think it even said Memorial Auditorium on the underneath of the seat, but you have a chair that comes from the building. And then you break it, and it's a real chair to begin with instead of something you've built out of those model airplane wing things that, balsa wood or whatever. I defy anybody. Go back and look at this on video and watch Dusty Rhodes hit Bubba Rogers over the head with a chair. You tell me which one got over better. That's all I'm going to say. Let your own eyes be the judges. But anyway, last week, or 2 weeks ago, Cody did Bruno and Zbyszko, and that didn't work, and now they're doing Dusty and Bubba, and that didn't work either.
If Adam Page teamed up with Anthony Ogogo, you know what the name of the tag team would be?
Page Ogogo?
Whiskey Ogogo.
Oh, I see what you did there.
This QT,
I'm just wondering when Anthony is going to go. What now?
This QT faction. Without even saying anything about the Caveman and Anthony Ogogo, and I don't even remember what the third guy's name is, to be honest with you.
Solo. He's Solo.
There's Solo, and there's Go-Go, and there's Caveman. I mean, it is like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
A Go-Go, and Camarado.
Well, there you go.
It's Hanna-Barbera.
Without Cody in the middle of this Nightmare Family versus Factory feud, does anyone care about this feud? All of a sudden, this feud that Cody was in the middle of, nothing against Dustin, and he took a lot of time to paint his face, it seemed like, this week for this segment.
Yes.
But Dustin's great in the ring. Dustin's not a pushed personality in AEW. Billy Gunn, he has a match every few months, and then we see him and his kids sitting in the audience singing songs and cheering people. The kids, they jumped the rail. They're now involved. Lee Johnson's back in the match next week. Without Cody there just isn't the star power for this feud. And that's not even getting into the actual booking of it.
And so I'm sure that some of them think that they're doing something for these guys. And I'm sure, of course, they've told these guys think Solo and Camarado and a Go-Go, we're on TV. Like, this is good. These guys are so too green. They don't understand that they're just meaningless, interchangeable fodder. Nobody has put any thought into any of them individually. They just throw them out there. And it's giving people a bad first impression of these guys as green flunkies of some goof that runs a wrestling school that's mad at Cody's brother and hit him with a fucking fake chair. So instead of taking each one of those guys, making them an individual and focusing on their strengths and accentuating those and trying to eliminate or hide their weaknesses in limited exposure until they're ready to really go fully. Instead, they put them all in a fucking bunch and send them out there to do stupid shit with other people that ain't over. So now, even if they go to other companies, that's the guy that was some fucking flunky in AEW. And that's why I say it's almost like they sit down and figure out how can we get the least out of the most. And the next thing, explain this one to me. The Elite were in their big custom trailer and doing an interview. And the Cucamonga kids were talking about their T-shirt sales in Japanese wrestling. Imagine that.
Can I stop you? I have to stop you.
Yes.
Before you say anything else that happens here. When it was just them in the trailer, again, I was high watching this. So when they all walked over there, I started laughing because it was just such a funny visual of these adults acting like this. Gallows is all goofy and they're just trying to justify their existence there. The Good Brothers. They're all silly and Omega looks ridiculous. And
the Bucks think now that they're real heels that they should dress like they just shopped at Liberace's fucking garage sale.
Hey, that Buck promo in the trailer, that's what I was going to say. I actually thought after they were done, I was like, wow, that was a heel promo from them finally, defined heel. Not just like we're baby faces, but we talk like heels. I was like, man, that's really good. This is a pretty good segment for them. I bet they won't mess this up.
Yeah. Well, Harpo had just got started with his breathy delivery, and all of a sudden there's horns honking outside. And he's trying to start, and they're saying, oh, keep going. And he's trying to go. He's like, what? Who's honking these horns? Like, who's dropped into my house with a fucking car on my fence? Of course, by the way, I think, did I mention we've seen just a shot of Moxley and Kingston? And did we see them at that point? We'd seen them in the fucking truck, didn't we? Just
Once we heard the horns, everyone started looking to see what was going on outside. And then all of a sudden there was a camera.
Okay, yeah. As soon as the heels in the trailer look out the window to see what this unscheduled and totally surprising honking is about, they cut to a camera shot. It's obviously already set up of Moxley and Kingston in a fucking pickup truck. If this is a big surprise, did they stop and pick the cameraman up and say, hey, come along with us or whatever? Whatever. So Moxley and Kingston rev the truck up and smash it into the side of this big, expensive custom trailer. And, of course, I'm having flashbacks on, yes, Vince, just because he could and wanted to, filled up a Corvette with cement or whatever. And just because Tony Khan can, he can buy a truck and he can buy a trailer. But to waste that amount of money on these goofs, on this program, it ain't going to do a goddamn thing for business because they just ran into these idiots' trailer that nobody even believes is theirs. They're just spending money now to do lesser versions of old Raw skits that were done when guys were over. But anyway, here's the point I want you to explain to me. Okay, so the heels are in the trailer. They get interrupted by the horn honking. They look out the window. Holy shit, here's Moxley and Kingston. They ram the fucking trailer. They get out of the truck, do Moxley and Kingston, go around and go into the trailer. And every single one of the people in the Elite in the trailer are gone, unable to be found. So Gallows and Anderson and Harpo and Callis and
Nakazawa.
Brandon
Cutler.
And Cutlet. And the Cucamonga Kids, what's that, 8, 9? They not only weren't upset that somebody broadsided their trailer, they weren't only such cowards that they obviously ran away into the night before these two guys came in and kicked the shit out of all of them, but also there's an element of teleportation involved because from the time that they rammed the trailer and got out of the truck and went around the other side, 8 people didn't have time to get out of that fucking thing. And why, where did they go? And why was it a thing that they would be gone? What sense did this make?
It didn't make any sense. I'm going to guess they filmed it on separate days, maybe? Because Moxley and Kingston ram the trailer, and then they get out with a pipe. Because at one point he says, get the pipe. And you hear Shivani go, he said, get the pipe! And then they go. And they smash in the window. You see them walk in and walk out. They say there's no one there. Now, there is a light at the other end of the trailer that's on, but I guess we're not concerned about that. And that's it. Somehow, the ramming happened.
The lights are on, but nobody's home.
The ramming happened. Everyone, all the heels, which obviously outnumbered the baby faces, they all ran off. It made no sense. If you're going to do this, you have to execute it better than this.
I think you're right. They shot it on separate days and nobody was, because you never saw, once the Elite's in the trailer, you never saw them outside the trailer. They looked out the window. You had to take their word for it.
We saw them walk into the trailer, or we saw a skit with them in the trailer. We never saw any interaction between the two sides.
Yes. Nor did we actually see, once that the heels were in the trailer, the shot out the window of the other people pulling up or anything. So yeah, there was probably 2 different days they thought, well, our fans are complete fucking morons. They wouldn't be watching this shit. So they'll buy it. The next match. Powerhouse Hobbs against everybody's favorite employee of the year, Christian Cage, the man who outworks everybody. And this was a test. I wrote at the start, this will be a test of Christian Cage's ability. And I think he did a pretty good job. He got a few spots in, and then Hobbs stopped him with a clothesline to the back of the head. That was a nice, where he ducked one clothesline, and then Hobbs came along and clotheslined him from the behind to the back of the head, and he went down on the floor. And you see Hobbs go to pick him up, and Cage was probably like, let me sell. And then Hobbs just stands up for a second like, okay, I'm not going to rush it. This is the kind of thing that these guys need, is somebody like Christian to work with, to get experience, to slow them down. I know that Christian probably he's been bit by the bug again and wants to be back in the ring for reasons that me and CM Punk can't understand. And he's willing to put up with a lot of this modern day stuff. And he's a nice guy, but still he can call a good basic match for a green guy and help them look better. And that may be the best way that he could contribute here, because he can take any of these guys if they just shut up and listen to him and slow them down and make them make sense and fucking teach them things. Having said that, it's still AEW. So, Hobbs at one point tossed Cage over the rail out in the fucking paid crowd, and the referee's count is meaningless, and they're not. A guy like Hobbs is not going to learn any good habits here as a whole in this promotion, because the rules are non-existent. The referees are fucking feckless. But Hobbs's heat on Cage was good basic stuff. Cage's comeback on Hobbs showed a little bit of Hobbs's greenness, but then he hit that great spine buster. I mean, the kid's a good athlete, and he's strong, you can tell. Cage hit a great frog splash. This match probably made more sense bell to bell than anything on the show. And finally, Cage hit his finish. What do they call it now? The kill switch. It used to be the Unprettier, which was a horrifying name. 1, 2, 3 on Hobbs. Good match. That there wasn't anything wrong with this. That I saw, at least.
It was okay. I mean, by this point of the show, I was starting to get a little exhausted with the show.
No, you just weren't high anymore.
No, I was high, but I was coming down. And I agree with you. They need guys like Christian Cage there to help them in the ring. And just little things like slow it down. But there was nothing about this match that interested me. And
I ended up, it was interesting.
And I ended up, I was just waiting for whatever Taz was going to do, because I figured there will be something with Taz. And I will like it, because Taz is really good, and I like a lot of the guys in his stable. I like a lot of the guys. I like Starks. Cage is all right. Hobbs shows potential. What the fuck is Hook? That's his stable. But it was all right. It was all right. They need to give Will Hobbs more time on TV and more time in the ring, actually more than anything else. But it was okay for what it was.
You're coming down just like their ratings. We'll talk about that in a minute. Jane Cargill promo package. I know you love her. I only love her when she's live, because in these promo packages, they get sound bites where she actually sounds like she's putting sentences together. And now the story is all the managers want her. Good Lord, because they work out so well with everybody else they sign.
All the managers. And then they showed Matt Hardy and Vicky Guerrero. All the managers.
I think Jake is after her, but that may be on a personal basis. I want live Jane Cargill, or I don't want Jane Cargill at all, because it's only a train wreck if it's live, and that's her appeal. So, this was what it was.
I want more Red Velvet. She's the one who's really impressed me in this feud.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, if I wanted to see something that was actually good, I would think Red Velvet. But if I want to see something that's train wreck, historically for the ages rotten, I want to see Jane Cargill speak live. Because the last one was impeccable. The only one was. Oh, and we come to the main event of our evening. Why have this? What idiot would book this match? Jungle Boy versus Darby Allin for the TV title. They're two most promising young, unexposed on other television, homegrown baby faces, and you're having them wrestle. You put Sting, the icon that you've just purchased, in a corner opposite other baby faces. That's insane. And then the two young guys that you have that have the exact same asset, much smaller than their opponents, physical underdogs that won't give up, so they get sympathy when they're faced with a big bully that's bigger than they are. But when they're wrestling each other, besides the fact that they're both baby faces, which is insane, especially at their level on the card, to do this to them and to put Sting against a popular babyface because you're just a fucking moron and don't understand the business. But when you have two guys this size wrestling each other, it completely neutralizes the way you can make their size work to their advantage by being the physical underdog and the sympathetic babyface, and it becomes two teenage kids that don't weigh 170 pounds wrestling each other, and slightly built teenagers at that. And yes, they had a good match because they're good athletes, and they do good moves, but they're both baby faces. They're both the young, sympathetic, small baby face. There's no reason to have the corner men. Dino Douche was in Jungle Boy's corner, Sting in Darby Allin's corner, because they're both baby faces. Why are you having to watch your guys back against another honorable person? They can work, and when Jungle Boy is not in the goof matches, both these guys' matches are generally good, but it's stupid booking, and it's unfair to do that to these guys, to just diminish the things that make them special and just put them as so. And then they advertise Darby Allin at 170 and Jungle Boy at 157, and it looks the opposite. But now you have two slightly built teenage-looking fucking kids that don't weigh 160 pounds that we're both supposed to cheer for, with an icon in one of them's corner and a fucking idiot in a dinosaur mask in the other one, and this is the TV main event. If this was a medical facility, they could all be sued for malpractice. They took a nice bump. Both of them took a bump over the rail, and that was their break spot. I mean, they all did their shit. They both, I should say, did their shit, and it was the modern shit where nobody actually wrestles like a baby face or a heel, which may have helped this here because you don't know which one was supposed to be which to begin with, and you don't want to see anybody lose. So since nobody actually wrestles like a baby face or a heel, that helped in this instance. Usually that's a bad thing. I did make a note that Jungle Boy had a dinosaur in his corner, and Darby did too. Sting's not that old. He's not a day over 12 million.
By the way, it is nice to see. I think this is the second time in a row, maybe, no Marco stunt with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus.
That was that I was going to mention. That is a good thing that they didn't bring Dwarf Dongsucker out to hoke this up like he usually does everything. Has somebody smartened up about his little fucking Weasley ass?
I don't know.
There are rumors going around that he's been a bad boy. I'm not talking about Jelly. I'm talking about the dwarf. But he's obviously a fucking stain on the wrestling industry, so the less we see him, the better. Anyway, Jungle Boy did one of those reverse Hurricane Ranas, dropped Darby Allin right on his fucking head. Jungle Boy hit 3 dives in a row out of the ring and never went for a cover, even after the last one. That's why it's bad habits that he will pick up and not be able to drop because he's working with substandard talent in the roster, not Darby Allin, but in the roster as a whole. Then Darby Allin did a coffin drop on Jungle Boy on the apron, off the ropes, onto the apron, onto the guy. The guy laying there taking it is equally as stupid as the guy giving it. And I say, fuck Darby Allin if he wants to cripple himself. But if I was Jungle Boy, I'd say, well, I sincerely hope you land well because I won't be here when you arrive. That's just ridiculous for a TV match that nobody's going to remember ever. And then Jim Ross says, well, time is running low, so you know that they got to get all their shit in and they're running late on their finish. So Dino Douche helps Jungle Boy back in the ring from the coffin drop on him. And Sting gets up in his face, Dino's that is, and Dino just kind of doesn't even shove him, just puts his hand on Sting's chest and pushes him back a little bit, and they started rotten fake fighting with neither one of them selling. Did you see that? Sting just, as said, they just start fighting for no reason. That's another thing. When Shitstain was trying to bury Sting, what was it, fucking 12 years ago now, by having Eric Young beat up him and Hernandez and stand over and cut a promo over him with a baseball bat when Eric Young wasn't even on the next pay-per-view and Sting and Hernandez were figured into it. I said, you're a fucking moron. Sting starts a fight with another babyface over questionable fucking reasons to begin with and clotheslines him, and the guy just fucking turns around and staggers off. And so you got two babyfaces, one an icon, starting a fight with each other for no apparent real reason, for no provocation, and it looks rotten and fake. And then guess what they did, Brian?
You're really waiting for me to guess?
Yes. I figure you'll get it this time. Guess what they did then, Sting and Dino Douche?
They fought off.
They fought off. That's exactly what they fought off. They just fight out of the building and you don't see them anymore. And then Jungle Boy and Darby Allin went into the finish at 100 miles an hour, and Jungle Boy got his snare trap hold. And guess what Darby Allin did to escape the submission hold? Darby Allin, the babyface champion, gouged the other babyface's eyes. It's the first time I've ever seen a babyface get out of a hold by gouging eyes. And then Jungle Boy got on top of Darby Allin and slapped him straight on the ear twice, hard, to the point where Darby Allin fucking covered his ears up with his hands. It was like, what the fuck are you doing? And then Darby Allin got a kind of a snazzy leg lock and beat the other babyface with a wrestling move, 1, 2, 3. And then they had an afterbirth, of course, because Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, and I know people are now saying, who? What? No, they haven't been on the rest of this program, but they just decided to run out right then and attack and beat up both Jungle Boy and Darby Allin until Jungle Boy and Darby Allin were saved by notorious heel Lance Archer without his heel manager, Jake Roberts.
No, Jake came out.
Was Jake out there? I just didn't notice him because he never actually gets close to these people. I think he's observing social distancing. Jake and the rest of these clowns. So Jake wanders out with Lance. Lance Archer makes the save. Lance Archer, who's been coming out and cutting promos on Sting, and then Sting last week agreed that Lance Archer was a top guy and wondered why he stops and starts. Well, now Lance Archer comes out and saves Sting's protege and his opponent from getting beat up by two unrelated heels. But then they stop Lance Archer, but before they can do anything to him, here comes Sting. He's coming back from fighting off with Dino Douche. We never see Dino again. Why didn't Dino come out to save Jungle Boy like Sting came back out to save Darby Allin and or Lance Archer? We don't know. Maybe Dino Douche is in the La Brea tar pit somewhere because Sting put him there. And Sting strolls out with his baseball bat in his hand, and when people see the AARP member with a bat walking not menacingly, but just kind of strolling toward them, they all run away. And that was the end of the pro. That's where my DVR froze up. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I think that was everything.
Could you figure out what in the fuck they were trying to get across at the end of that? Who's mad at who and why?
I was surprised about the match, too, and they kept saying, whenever they said this is fans' choice or the fans demanded it on the internet. It's the first I heard about it. Yeah, I didn't hear anything about this match until I saw it here. I don't know what was going on. I started out so positively about the show. Page versus Starks, and then we got Penta and his heel manager. But boy, it went off the tracks by the end of it. And it was an all right match too, by the way. For a babyface versus babyface match.
Yes. If you're going to have it, it was a good match. It's just the stupidest thing that I've ever heard of to even have that match. And the way that they presented it and the finish and the afterbirth, the guys' actual athleticism with each other, except for the stupid, dangerous stuff they did for no reason, is fine. But you're just a complete idiot to book that or to have it or to promote it or to arrange the finish as such or etc. And here we are. I was going to say, let's close with the ratings. So they topped out at about 800,000 when they were opposed, except if they got Shaquille O'Neal, they could get 1 million. Then they went unopposed and they went to 1.2 million because they got 300,000 or 400,000 of NXT's people. Now the second week they're unopposed, they're back down to 1.1 million from 1.2 million. How many weeks before they're back down to the 800 and something thousand?
Do you think they're going to go back down to the 800 something thousand?
I think they will. The range that they were in was in the, at worst, high sixes and at best mid eights or high eights thereabouts, right? I think they'll settle in at under 1 million because more rotten television. These people are probably people who have not sat and watched this thing live or made the effort to or gone all the way through it or whatever. And once that people see what one of these shows is like to sit and watch all the way through, they're going to lose some of them. Whether they settle at just north of or just under 1 million, I don't know, but I don't see them keeping up the first 2 weeks unopposed numbers doing TV shows like this. And they're traditionally, every time they do something, special match, special celebrity, big name, unopposed, whatever, to get numbers, it lasts either until the next week or 2 or 3 weeks, and they're back to where they were at. I don't think they're going to go all the way back down in the sixes while they're unopposed. I don't think they're going to stay regularly up over in 7 figures. I think they're probably going to get an extra 150 or maybe 200,000 of the NXT people that say, well, it's wrestling, I guess, so we'll watch it. But this program is not a program that would grow in viewership for any reason other than artificially taking away an opposition program or bringing in a special guest, because it doesn't make sense. The programs don't make sense, and the angles and rivalries don't make sense from week to week. The TV show doesn't make sense from start to finish when you're watching it. And the booking doesn't make sense from week to week. So you're not like hooking people and getting them to start tuning in because, wow, this is so good and engrossing. Every time they get a fucking several 100,000 people handed to them for some reason or another, they get that and then they lose them within a few weeks. And this is going to be the same thing. They're just not going to settle down as far as they were, but they're, I don't see growth in this TV. Why would people not only start watching this on a regular basis right now? If they started watching right now, I'm going to start watching this. Why would they get interested on watching it every week? And why would they start telling other people to watch it, as stinky and nonsensical as it is in its current form? If you don't already like silly modern wrestling, how are they going to talk you into liking it if you don't already?
Well, there it is.
You still stoned?
No, I mean, there's not really much to say.
The question, do you know, can you come up with any idea of how they can get people who don't already watch this program and who don't like modern silly wrestling to become engrossed in this program and start watching it? How? How would they do that?
I don't know. Maybe if you went on a multi-week run of serious programming with really great angles and really great promos and stuff that people have to talk about, that'd be one thing. But I have to think it's going to be hard for them to discover new people. Like the people that are in the door now are the people who are going to be there. Are you going to pick up any people who are watching NXT who didn't watch because of that? Perhaps someone who didn't know about it? I mean, that's the question. Are there people out there right now looking for a wrestling alternative and they don't even know AEW exists? Or do all of those people who are looking know about it and they kind of don't care? They'll tune in here and there. There are a lot of people who hate Raw. There's a lot of people who hate WWE, and they will still watch Raw every single Monday night out of force of habit or addiction. I don't know what it is exactly.
Whatever, self-loathing, whatever it is. But at the same time, yeah, anybody that's going to try to watch AEW already knows AEW is there. And that's why they get Shaquille O'Neal, they do a big debut, they go unopposed, they pop a number, and those people never come back because those are the people who weren't sold on the idea of, I'm going to watch any other program besides Vince McMahon's and love it. They just want to see a good program, and they don't see that, so they don't come back. It's not rocket science. They've been on television for 1.5 years now. And the show ain't got better. They've done more damage to the talent they started out with that was over than they have helped any new talent they've got since then. They started with guys that were more over than they are now, and the people they have brought in since then were more over when they debuted than they are now that they've been exposed on AEW television. And I do mean exposed in that way. So, good luck. These are the people that are left that are going to watch this fucking phony bullshit modern wrestling after what everybody's done to it. These are the people that are left, and you're fighting for the table scraps, and there's fewer and fewer of them. And since the WWF is doing a rotten program and AEW is doing a fucking amateur program, we're going to lose several hundred of those over the next couple of years. They're just going to, it's not like it used to be, and fuck wrestling. Just like we lost all the other millions. Because it's not like it used to be, and it sucks. Closing thoughts on this week's program.
Not really. We'll see everyone on the drive-thru. Of course, you can get access to classic shows, patreon.com/Cornette. And thank you to all the subscribers of the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel.
And we got more of those, too. Now, see, basically, they can have the people that want to watch wrestling. I'll take the audience that doesn't watch it anymore because it sucks and just wants to make fun of the new shit and tell old stories because my potential audience is much bigger. Theirs is very tiny, minute even, microscopic, almost the size of Shitstain's little tallywhacker. So I'm going for the fucking, the big audience, which we get every week here on The Experience and the drive-thru, and we will do this again next week for the grating Brian Last, the newest bank-addicted drug robber or whatever the case he had. Brian, we're going to have to get you an intervention here. I never realized that AEW would drive my broadcast partner